All right. Well, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, and the public. It's 5:30, so we're going to get started right on time and be prompt. This is our second virtual workshop of the month of July, and I see Commissioner Granger is wanting to come in. So as we talked about, usually kind of the mayor has some things that he'd like to talk about, and so for this one this evening is our fire department, and we're joined by Chief Collier, and then also the city attorney after that. And so I think, Mayor, if you're good with that, we'll just jump right into a presentation from Chief Collier, and then we'll be prepared to ask any questions that you and your colleagues on the commission might have. So all yours, Chief.
All right. Give me just a second to share my screen. All right, Mayor and Commissioners, again, thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to come up today and to give you a broad overview of the department. Today's focus is really going to be on why we operate in the manner that we do, the level of service that we provide, and what kind of drives that, and explaining why we have so many stations, the equipment we have, the personnel we have, and how we get to that point, and kind of what we're looking for in the future. All right, so first and foremost, one of the biggest drivers of any fire department is the Insurances Services Organization, or ISO. So this is an advisory group that gets together and meets with every single fire department in the nation on a 5-year basis. And what they do is they focus on property casualty insurance, including both residential and commercial. Then after that evaluation period, it takes several months to go through. They provide a rating from 1 to 10, 10 being worst, which essentially means you have no fire protection and you're not insurable, all the way down to 1. It shows that you have the highest level of protection you're able to provide to your citizens. So this rating is point-based. It is based on a range of 0 to 105.5 points. And with that, every 10-point increase that you have in your score, you move up a rating. So for instance, if you were in the 70 to 79 range, you're a class 3. If you're 80 to 89 range, you're a class 2, so on and so forth. Again, we are evaluated every 5 years. Our last evaluation was in 2022, where we received a class 2 rating. It's important to note that this rating does affect every citizen and business in the city limits. That is for Panama City proper and for Panama City North. Our next evaluation is coming due in 2027, and we look forward to increasing our score even more. One big thing to note on the ISO classification rating scores is, although we are rated as a 2X, that does not mean that every structure in the city is rated at the same rating. So for instance, our larger critical infrastructures like our churches or multi-story buildings or industrial complexes, those may have a different rating than a 2. Some are at a 6, some are at a 7, some are at a 5. So any fluctuation that occurs in our scoring has a potential impact on their scoring as well. The big part to note on this is, out of the 40,000 fire departments that are evaluated, only 1,729 have a class 2 rating, which puts us in the top 4% of all fire departments in the nation. So you'll notice that our score is a 2X. So what does that mean? So the 0-2 is really the classification for Panama City proper. We're an urban dense area. That's where the primary rating is applied to. The 2X designation is shared with Panama City North. So since we currently don't have fire protection, any stations, any equipment, apparatus, personnel, so on and so forth in Panama City North, as of right now, they share the same classification rating as Panama City proper. So all of our residents, their insurance rates are dictated off of the 2 rating. And on this slide, it's just a further breakdown of how they get to those classifications, where the 2X or the X portion comes from. And it's really all dependent based off of station locations, based off of mileage, hydrant locations to the nearest structure of the insured property. The reason we're not a 10 is because we do have good response times. Another thing that helps us keep this rating low for Panama City North is our automatic aid agreement with Bay County Fire Rescue. While we don't have a station within 5 road miles, They do provide us some closer distance than what we're currently at. Most of our stations are between 9 and 11 miles away from Panama City North. The closest station for Bay County is roughly 6.5 miles, and that's the station that's off of East Avenue and Highway 231. All right, so the actual rating score, this is the entire system that we're evaluated off of. As you see in our 2022 evaluation, we received an 81.26 out of the possible 105 points. We actually received the Class 2 rating back in our 2017 evaluation. And I'll be honest with you, the only reason why we obtained that rating was because they added an additional 5.5 points in 2017. And that was to the community risk reduction section. That used to not be available, but now it is. And what that's saying is that we're putting more emphasis on our fire prevention, code compliance aspects, our fire safety training aspects to our citizens, and a myriad of other things. So you'll see all the classifications, all the different groups are broken down. 5.5 points for the community risk reduction, 40 points for water, 50 points for fire, and 10 points for emergency communications. Throughout this, you're going to see on these graphs, there's a lot of dashes, a couple little dots, and solid lines. So if you look at the bottom of this slide, this tells you what they are. So peer group, so we are put up against, this is identification of other departments, our size, our strength, our water system capacity. How do we rate to our peer group personnel? And you'll see on this that we actually exceed most departments in this area. The state group is just that. We're put up against every other department in the state. How do we rate compared to those? And then your dashed lines is, how do we compare to your nationwide? All right. So first up is our community risk reduction section. So you'll see here we've for the last two evaluations that we've gone through, we have maxed out in these sections. So the first one's our fire prevention and code enforcement, which is code compliance now. But this is everything that we do pertaining to annual fire inspections, to permitting, planning, occupancy inspections, our quality insurance programs. Anything that deals with fire prevention is rated in this category. And I will say, since we've assumed building services and we are now the fire official for the city, this year alone, we've conducted over 273 pre-plan and permitting applications. And on an annual basis, we conduct roughly over 2,800 annual fire inspections to all of our businesses. And this is why we receive the full rating. Fire safety education, as you know, we love public safety and education. We love doing our truck displays, our station tours, all of our notices we do on social media, all the notices you get biannually on your water bill. That all goes towards the ISO rating that you see here. And investigation is just that. We are responsible for conducting our own fire investigation. That's within our parameters. And essentially what this is saying is that we have enough personnel who are certified to conduct fire inspections, fire investigations when we do have an incident. So we don't have to rely so heavily on the state fire marshal's office. A lot of the determinations can be done at our level. Up next, so 40 points is our water system capability. Some of this we have direct effect on, others we do not. So you'll see here that the scores do kind of fluctuate throughout. The water system capability is just that. They look at the size pipes that we have, how many hydrants do we have, how much water flow is available, what's the needed fire flow for certain critical infrastructures. As we know, our water system is being worked on as we speak, and we actually fully anticipate that we'll see an increase in score on our next evaluation due to all the construction that's happened all over the city with improving our water system capability. Hydrants, we do phenomenal on. We have over 2,077 hydrants located within Panama City proper and Panama City North, so we are well covered, and that score reflects that. Our inspection we max out on annually. So this is when you see our post about annual hydrant maintenance. This is exactly what it is. We are required to touch every single hydrant in the city every single year and do general maintenance on them, some general flowing on them just to ensure that they are functional. And then we write up anything that we find that's abnormal or is affecting the ability of that hydrant. Hydrant flow testing. So this is required every 5 years, and you'll see that we've received a 0 on this. I'll be honest with you, we've always received a 0 on this. When I got into this position in 2020, we did a deep dive into our ISO program and NFPA requirements on why weren't we getting credit on this. So we knew in the 2022 evaluation that we were going to receive a 0, but we had already put policies, procedures, and steps in place to get us ready for the next evaluation process because we weren't going to have time to do it. So in 2022, when we conducted our hydrant flow testing, it was right after our evaluation, and we implemented those new procedures to match what ISO and NFPA requires us to do. Next year, we are actually moving up our flow testing, and we're going to do it again prior to our evaluation. So we have 2 sets of data showing that we are following what NFPA and ISO want to see from us. So we totally expect that we'll see an improvement on that score on our next evaluation. So the biggest section is your fire department. This is what drives a lot of your ISO rating, and there's a lot of different considerations that go into the scoring of this area. So your first one is your engine companies. How many engines do you have in your service area? As you see here, we have 6. We actually get credit for our ladder truck as a pumper and an aerial, and I'll cover that here in a minute. So we do phenomenal on that coverage. Although we have 5 stations, we do get credit for 6 apparatus. Our deployment is just that. This is a big one. So when we talk about our station locations, our response times, this is where it comes from. So they examine our distribution of engine and ladder companies throughout the city, and they want to see how our coverage area is every 1.5 miles to an engine response and every 2.5 miles for a ladder response. And in that, they also track our response times to first unit on scene, right? And when all units arrive on scene to a fire. So you'll see here, they analyze us. We have 320 seconds to meet that goal, which is 5 minutes and 20 seconds. And then we have 560 seconds, which is roughly 9 minutes and 20 seconds to have all units on scene. And as you see there, our score has always been very good with our deployment because of how we are set up throughout the city. Reserve pumpers is just saying if I have an apparatus that goes down, I have one that can go in its spot while it's getting repaired. We've always done well in that area. Personnel, this is probably the hardest part of the scoring. NFPA, and I have a couple slides later on which kind of show you what NFPA recommends for personnel responding to a structure fire. ISO.
Keith, let me interrupt you. No, fine. So for those that might not know what NFPA is, can you briefly explain what NFPA is?
Yeah, so that's the National Fire Protection Association, and essentially they set the national framework for the regulations and guidance on how fire departments are supposed to operate. So they give us direction on what our benchmarks should be. Specifically to this, it's NFPA 1710, which gives us what our response time should be for the type of service area we have, which I'll get into later on.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And ISO, back to the personnel. So ISO really wants to see us have 6 personnel on each apparatus, which we absolutely know that's not feasible. So we do somewhat well in this area. We've tried over the years increasing our staff to improve this number, and we're getting there. Pump capacity, really not much to that. It's just saying that we service test our apparatus. They have enough pump capacity to pump enough water to a large fire. Training, the fire department conducts over 25,000 hours of training a year for all personnel. ISO actually has certain requirements we have to meet for all of our personnel in certain areas. The big focus is on the fire ground skill. This includes our firefighters. There's certain hours that have to be met at our officer level, our driver level, so on and so forth. So we do a really good job of doing that. Ladder service, as you see here, we're almost right at our peer group, and that's because we get credit for both of our aerial devices. I know we've worked recently to try to replace our ladder 2. It's still in service. Actually, I apologize. It's actually out of service. The transmission went out of it yesterday. So, but we do get a good score on this with what we have in service right now. So our Tower 1 and ladder 2 at Station 2. Operational considerations. This is just our policies and procedures for fire response. This is saying that we meet all of the NFPA guidelines and requirements, state and federal requirements for those policies, and how we deploy is to their liking. And reserve ladder service, we do not keep a reserve ladder truck. It's just economically not feasible to do it. And essentially, you're only getting half a point if you do. So we don't mess around with that one. And lastly, it's not going to. Okay. So lastly is communications. This aspect, these 10 points, we actually have no control over. This is solely dictated by Bay County Emergency Services. Every fire department in the county is dispatched from them. So whatever their rating is for their emergency dispatching and call processing times and their equipment and their personnel, that score reflects to every department. As you see here, we've never really had an issue with that, even though we don't have control over it. We have good working relationships with the county, and we're always looking at ways to improve our dispatching capabilities. Okay, that covers ISO. Does anybody have any questions about ISO? It's a lot. Okay, I'll move on.
I have a quick question. On the fire hydrants, how many? You said we have 2,077. How many are not working, and does that count against us when we don't have those? And I know the fire hydrant not working is not your fault, but I'm just trying to get an idea how they score that.
No, so right now we have 79 hydrants out of service, which makes up approximately 3.8% of our total hydrants. So when ISO comes and does their evaluation, they actually give us a spreadsheet of critical infrastructures in the city. And we go out and we get to pick which hydrants we want to do 2-hydrant flow testing on for that evaluation, or we can use historical data for that. So if we have, let's say, a church that we go to, on one corner there's a hydrant out of service, but on the other corners, those hydrants are in service. That's perfectly fine. That doesn't hurt us. Now, if we had like a whole city block or a whole neighborhood, then yes, that would probably be a discussion we'd have to have. But no, where our hydrants are out of service is pretty sporadic throughout the city. There's really not a group or clustered area that we're concerned about that's not already in a construction area. So going through that evaluation, that shouldn't impact us hardly at all.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just add the technology and the data that they have. I mean, as our men and women from the fire department en route to a call, they know prior to arriving what fire hydrant they're going to hook up to and the status of any fire hydrants in that immediate area.
Right.
So,
Chief, is there a reason why fire is handled by the county dispatch but police is not? Is there a difference in the way that you guys respond to emergency calls?
A huge difference. To be honest with you, we used to be with PCPD dispatch. And I want to say roughly in 2012, we transitioned away from them and went up to Bay County EOC for dispatching. And that came out of two agreements, essentially. We entered into a 25-year agreement with the county for them to utilize our Station 6. And in turn, they would give us free dispatch for 25 years. So we do not pay for that service.
That's a good deal. Lastly, Chief, you mentioned ISA ratings and their effect on fire insurance rates. Is there like a percentage base that's like, is there someone is there a way to truly calculate that value to a homeowner?
Not on our end. No, sir. No.
Okay.
So once they take this evaluation, they go back, they have a myriad of formulas that they come up with. And honestly, I believe it's up to every insurance carrier to dictate it how they want and to set their rates how they want.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Lucas, I see your hand up, ma'am.
Yes, this is ISO, our rating for the number of personnel that we had. Now, if I'm tracking with you, this was done in 2022. So did we have fewer employees then than we do now, and we achieved the rating that we did at that point?
No. So essentially what we do is we go off of what's called our minimum staffing number. So our minimum staffing for the department is set at 20 personnel per shift. And that's a minimum of 3 personnel on every apparatus, except for our ladder truck, we always staff with 4. So typically they go off of whatever our minimum staffing number is. Over the last couple of years, we did add a new position to each of our stations, and we did increase our minimum staffing requirement. But on a couple of slides from here on, I'll be explaining why we went back down to 20.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Hughes?
Yes, sir. What percentage of our calls are fire burning versus say medical?
40% versus 60. So 60% medical, 40% fire related or miscellaneous calls.
Wow. Okay. So like burning, not somebody's putting out almost when y'all show up, it's burning. That's 40%?
Well, no. So
That's a
I'm
lot.
sorry. So yeah, 40%. When you say fire calls, we kind of group the two together. You have your EMS calls, which could be any type of EMS call. When we talk about fire calls, yes, that's structure fires, but it can also incorporate automatic alarms, complaints on burning, woods fires, MVAs, that type of stuff, rescues.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay. All right. So the next slide, you're going to see a breakdown of our current station locations and how we staff those. So you'll see Panama City proper. We have 5 station locations, and each one of those little colors designates their boundaries, essentially their response boundaries. Station 6, again, is unmanned. That is actually staffed with Bay County EMS personnel. They run it as a substation. We've looked at that station over the years, and it's actually not suitable for what we need and how we operate. So that's why we've continually been looking for alternative locations and alternative sites to build a new station. So you'll see here how we staff our current personnel as of today. And you'll see that our FY25 daily staffing, we have 25 personnel per shift with a minimum staffing of 22. And in fiscal year 26, we are reducing that to 24 per shift, and our minimum staffing is going back to 20. So when we talk about the ISO rating for personnel, we will probably not see an increase in that point area, but we will not see a decrease because we are not going below what we've already been rated on. Yeah. Okay. So you'll see on some of these apparatus where we don't have personnel assigned to them. Really, there's 2 of them. So Fireboat 1, we don't have dedicated personnel per se that are staffed on that 24/7. Just like we did today, we had a call out to Shell Island. And if we have fireboat operators available to respond with the fireboat, we hook it up, we go put it down on the marina, and we go assist where we need to. So we do have certified personnel each day in most instances at Station 1, and they'll take that call when it's available. Kind of the same thing with our Rescue 2. So years ago, we actually upstaffed our Ladder 2 to have 5 personnel, and on days where they are staffed with 5 personnel, we take 2 off and we put them on the rescue. And this was to lighten the burden on Ladder 2, have the rescue, which is a smaller apparatus, run, our minor MVAs, our medical calls, just the smaller type incidents that don't necessarily require a fire apparatus to reduce, the maintenance costs, the wear and tear on the ladder. With that, on most days, we do not staff that because of our current staffing levels. So Ladder 2 is staffed with 4, and that's all we typically run. So Rescue 2 is kind of hanging out. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned a couple times on staffing. Why is it hard to get personnel? Is it pay? Is it just hard? Is that a hard industry to get people to come into?
No, sir. I'm going to get into it here in just a little bit.
Okay.
But
Okay.
we are typically fully staffed. Where this is coming from for fiscal year 26 is a reduction in our budget. So we have frozen and unfunded 3 open positions. Outside of that, we are fully staffed.
Very good. Okay.
All right. So kind of back to what I was talking about with ISO. So NFPA 1710 is what really drives our response times. You'll see on here, the alarm answering time, the call processing time, that part doesn't affect us. That's the dispatching points that come from ISO. So that's really on Bay County EOC on that part to accumulate those percentages and those points. Where ISO looks at us is our turnout time, our first engine arrival time, and our full response time with every apparatus to a fire scene. So Fire department response times are based off of that. And for fires, we are supposed to be with our first unit on scene within 5 minutes and 20 seconds. And for all EMS calls within 5 minutes. So our average response time right now for fire calls is 5 minutes and 8 seconds and 4 minutes and 28 seconds for all EMS calls. And that's, again, because of how we have our stations laid out, the number of apparatus personnel that we have. Again, we're evaluated for our initial full alarm response times, which is 9 minutes and 20 seconds. That's having every apparatus responding. And in this case, for all of our first alarm fires, so that's the initial call out for a fire, we always send 2 engines, an aerial, and a battalion chief. And you'll see that our initial full alarm response average is 7 minutes and 8 seconds with our current deployment. One important note is that approximately 40% of our calls are overlapping. And what that means is 40% of the time, I have more than one unit out working a different type of call. So our response times do get affected by that because we are running so many calls and I've got so many units out at one time that we have that overlap. So could our response times be better? Absolutely. But that would require, additional personnel, apparatus, all that stuff to shave off a couple seconds. So we talked about staffing requirements. Again, NFPA 1710 and ISO dictate this. As you see, minimum on duty, 4 per engine, 4 per truck. ISO really wants you to have 6, but again, we know that's not feasible. Again, we deployed 2 engines, an aerial, and a battalion chief to all fires. So with that, with our current staffing levels of 25, that means a full staffing of 10 to 13 personnel are responding to an initial fire. Where that range comes from is if we are fully staffed, everybody is on the truck for that day, 13 people minimum are showing up. If we are minimum staffing at that 20 requirement, then we've got at least 10 showing up. And we have steps in place to call for additional resources if we need it. And again, this comes from the reason why we're going to see a reduction for next year is going to go down to 10 to 12, and that's because we have frozen and unfunded 3 positions from the tentative budget for next year.
I got a question.
Sir. Oh, yeah.
What is, response times, personnel? How do we, is there like a service that cities use to go you need to have departments here and here and here, and they need to be this size, or is that like a math equation in your head? Because if we solely looked at response times, we would just be we're going to put a station in every single neighborhood with 1 car and 1 guy. And so how do you balance response times and all that personnel and
So there's a lot that goes into it. So we use a lot of analytical data these days, and in the coming slides, I'm actually going to show you that breakdown of how we come up with our response times and our coverage areas. So analytics are huge for us. So monthly, we actually run monthly reports. We discuss it as a command staff on different ways to improve our response times, whether that's through turnout times, response times. We take a deep dive at, our station locations. Are they where they need to be? Do we have the right equipment and apparatus? So all that kind of goes into that framework when we're looking at our deployment model. The response times, again, we try to meet what the NFPA and ISO requirements are, so we're staying within their guidelines as well. Okay. All right, so into the analytics. I know everybody's favorite. All right, so this first one is just an overview of the entire city and what our current coverage for all call service is for first unit response. And with our current 5 station locations, you see overall, we actually have a very good coverage response. I will note, so this is updated data from 2024. If you look at the northernmost tip here off of Venetian, the reason why we're seeing a delay in response is all the construction that's happening. That is delaying our response times. Same thing down here in the Cove. All of our data was based off of the construction that was going on. So we should start seeing a lot of improvements in those areas. These little oranges that you see over here, I'm going to get into that in just a minute. This little orange area over here is Sweet Bay. Make sure you can see yours. Yeah. Do y'all see my cursor? These 4 little orange blocks. Sweet Bay. So that's an ongoing issue. We know the roadways are narrow. We know there's a lot of traffic that's in and out of there. So that does cause us some delays. We know long term they're going to be building a service road that actually connects to Jackson Way, which connects right to Station 5, which hopefully we should see some improvements with our response times. All right, so one of the very first things that we wanted to do as a department to see how can we improve our response times. So the first thing we looked at was our response boundaries for each one of our stations. So what you see here for each of the 5 stations, this is what their current response grids are. So when a unit is dispatched out versus a backup unit, this is kind of the grid model that's used by dispatch. Station 6's area, all of PC North, that's actually covered by Station 4 as of right now. So when we're evaluated by ISO, they are looking for what unit gets on scene first most of the time. So in this instance, let's say the boundary zone for Station 5 says 5 should be right there at 23rd Street before Station 4 every time. Well, when we look at the data, it says no, Station 4 is beating them there 95% of the time. You need to update your response boundaries because when we're evaluated, ISO is only taking credit for what unit should be there first. So we're actually losing minuscule points, but still we're losing points that we can gain from a change of our boundary areas. So when we ran the analytics, this is what it should be. And you see there's a huge change. Obviously, you see Station 4's area increase, kind of creeps up on Station 5's area. One of the interesting parts, so if you remember in the other slide, there's a couple yellows and oranges right in this area. That response zone right now belongs to Station 2. And what we found is actually Station 1 beats Station 2 to that area. And we're talking about the East-West Caroline area of Beach Drive. And also in our old data or our old mapping, Station 4 had a little sliver of this as well. So we're actively pursuing this. We were working with the county. We were waiting for them to update their CAD info so we can update our mapping. And once that happens, we'll take a period of time to evaluate to ensure that these new districts or these new response grids are actually enhancing our response times. The interesting part of this is when you look at Panama City North, Station 3 actually beats Station 4 to most of our service area in Panama City North. So when we started running calls for service up there, we wanted to find out what was the best route for each one of our apparatus to take. So Engine 4 almost always goes up 231 to Star Avenue. Engine 3 actually comes out, goes to Business 98. They go down 22 and up Star Avenue. And that's why their response time is quicker because the traffic is a lot less for them to deal with. So we'll be making those tweaks.
Chief, can you just talk briefly about Station 6 because some of the new members in the public might not know that that's actually we have a long-term lease, I believe, with the county, right?
We do. That's the 25-year lease that I was talking about earlier for dispatching services. So again, Station 6 is not manned by us. We have never had equipment or personnel in there. We have never responded out of there. Before my time, that station was purchased in the hopes that PC North would grow. That did not come to fruition until recently. But that station does not suit our needs. And again, that's why we've been actively looking at different locations. All right. So next, I was asked to run some analytics of what if scenarios. You know, what if we had the discussion that, okay, our station coverage is too much. We want to reduce it or consolidate it some to save funding, right? So on the left side of your screen, you're going to see what our current deployment is for all structure fires, our first unit response times. And as you see here, we do phenomenal job on this. Our first unit is there almost 100% of the time within that 5 minutes and 20-second requirement. And that's because of our current station locations and deployment models. So the first scenario that we ran was, what if we closed Station 3, right? So you'll see on the right-hand side, the changes from your left-hand side of what our call times increase to, because now the primary station would become Station 1 for that response.
It's not talking about personnel and equipment.
Correct.
It's just moving it.
Moving it, yeah. So to kind of give you a deeper view of that, so again, on the left is what the current coverage is for Station 3's area. And on the right is what it would go to. So you're going to see that we're going from less than 2 minutes, 20 seconds for most of the area, and we're increasing to over 4 minutes in some cases. And it's important to note, the critical infrastructure that we have on the southernmost tip in Millville, which is eastern, the port, the asphalt plant. So we have some multi-billion-dollar companies that really need our protection.
I did sidebar with David just now. I did want to note this is only divesting ourselves of the station. The personnel and apparatus in this model would move to station one. So it wouldn't, you'd only save maintenance and operation of the building itself and insurance and whatnot.
So next we took a look at a what if scenario. What if we close Station 5? So again, on the left is our current deployment model. As you see, we have really good coverage for all those areas. On the right-hand side, you see that changes significantly. So that station alone provides a lot of coverage to the northern part of Panama City proper. So we're talking about Sweet Bay, we're talking about Venetian Villa, and all those homes off of Candlewick and everything in between. The other part to this is when you start talking about consolidation of this type, that workload transitions to the current stations. It doesn't go away. So that's also something else that we look at. Yes, sir. Commissioner Granger?
I'll point out that Sweet Bay is growing still, and I think ultimately we're at a little over 700 homes here now, and they're authorized to build up to, I want to say it was close to 4,500 homes. So the Sweet Bay area will continue to grow.
Yep. And I'll just go to the next slide just to give you that closer comparison.
Yeah.
Yep.
Commissioner Hughes?
When you say that the red on the right side is greater than 540, how much is it? 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
Honestly, it would vary based off the type of call. This is just telling us that, hey, you would have calls that would be over that 5 minutes and a 40-second time frame. It could be a minute, it could be 2 minutes. It would vary on what units are out responding versus what the call type is and where it's located.
So that would be true for any of the other ones that have a lower response time, and just depending on the call. Right? Okay.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes, the greater than 540 in the brackets, is that the number of structures that are greater than
Yes.
540?
Yeah. So that's based off of the amount of calls that we've had up to this period of time. Yes.
So in the projected or example here, we don't know what those numbers, we haven't looked at that historically to other than just we see in the red that it's a lot of
Yes.
structures, but
So this is taking information that we already have. So the left-hand side is actually real-time data from our CAD, so from our actual calls. What the right picture shows is the what if scenario. All it's saying is it's taking that same amount of calls and call types, and it's saying, okay, if you take this away, this is the potential impact it's going to have on this area based off the new distance that your apparatus have to go.
Can we put the current historical data into the what if scenario to see what the numbers would have been had this already been in place?
That's essentially what this is.
On the right.
So, yes. So do you know the numbers of structures? Because you can tell me that.
No, off the top of my head, the amount of structures that we're losing the coverage on, no, ma'am.
Yeah, to be clear, the numbers in brackets on current deployment, that's the numbers of, she's asking if that's the number of structures.
No, that's not the number of structures. So that's taking the amount of calls.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
So can we apply the number of calls to our proposed hypothetical that if it were already in place, those calls, it would have been 200, 300,
Honestly, what I can do is I can change the workload, and all that does is it says, okay, you've already have, if we're only looking at the red area, for instance, if it says, hey, we have 188 calls right now, I can increase that workload to say, okay, well, what if we had 240? What's that going to do? And provide that type of data. But essentially, it's already taken, hey, this is what you have. If you didn't have this, this is what it's going to go to based off of today's data.
All right, Commissioner Street.
Chief, does this take into account mutual aid agreements and response time?
No, and neither does ISO.
I think the reason why I ask is I mean, we have more municipalities inside of Bay County than any other county in the state, and so that means we have more in total. Although it's not just Panama City, we have more fire stations as a result of that. And so it would seem to me that we've got to find a way to somehow calculate that response. Otherwise, these alcoves, if the county had the same attitude of, we won't take into account mutual aid, what would Kings Point look like? It would look really, really bad, because their closest station, I think, is pretty far on the beach in their response time. And so that kind of leads back to my question on ISO rating, and maybe I can get some insurance experts to kind of give some clarity on what we're really talking about. We're gaining and losing and tracking so heavily with ISO. It may be worth it. I don't know the answer to that question, but if somebody told me, hey, it's going to cost you, 4 times the amount in fire assessment versus another $50 on my home insurance every year, well, I would take $50 on the home insurance, if that makes sense. And so then you can actually look at it from the perspective of ISO. And instead of ISO, you're looking at actual response times to the closest station, not just the closest station in Panama City. That's just my thought, listening.
Commissioner Granger.
Yeah, so the research that I've done on ISO ratings versus impact to insurance is that this is I want to say a closely held secret, but each insurance company has its own actuarial services, and they're not going to pull back the curtain and show anybody how they do that. But if you take just aggregate rates and look at the different how much home insurance costs for houses, and then overlay the different ISO ratings, you can kind of tease out that an ISO or PPC rating of 2 is going to save a resident anywhere from $200 to $800 a year in homeowners insurance. Now, obviously, that is hyper local to the house. A house on the water is going to cost more than a house that's well inland. So it is a very difficult thing to pin down, just because every single home is different. Even the exact same floor plan, as soon as you put it into a flood zone, it's going to impact that cost, right? But overall, what I'm seeing is $200 to $800 annually per household. So that's my research that I've come up with. So I share that with y'all.
Brian, would you agree that perhaps Margaritaville and Sweet Bay are fairly comparable in size, sales points, and like-in-kind communities?
I would say they're very, very close. Margaritaville is a 55 and up community. Sweet Bay is not, and that's pretty much the big difference there. But yeah,
I'm just thinking.
I would say insurance rates are probably going to be higher for Sweet Bay area, just due to the proximity to the water, whereas Margaritaville is pretty inland.
It's on the intercoastal. So
Is it?
It's still,
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So
And then
one
it
of
should be similar.
the reason why I say that is it's rated at a rural service area designation, whereas we're rated differently, and that's definitely an ISO difference. So maybe we could just ping a couple of people in Margaritaville and Sweet Bay and see, hey, it's like kind of construction. There's a lot of other things that are similar, same county, and just see if we can kind of extrapolate something more localized to our area. Just a thought.
Yeah, I will also say, just being on the Facebook group here in Sweet Bay, you can see wildly different valuations of insurance. I think that comes from multiple factors. One is you can get. I know in Sweet Bay you can go from a home that is 3 bedroom, 2 bath, probably 2,200 square feet to 5,800 square foot home very easily. And the homes, the way they're designed, sometimes don't look like they're that big, right? But the other piece to that too is how much insurance are you purchasing can be another factor in how much you pay, right? In fact, it's usually the largest factor in how much you pay. And I think you'll find that some people are overinsured, and there's probably a lot of people who are underinsured, no matter where you look. This it's a tough one to figure out insurance, because again, you're dealing with 100 different companies and a million different situations. I have really tried to try to aggregate this out and make it easier to understand. And it's just incredibly difficult to do so. Some insurance companies don't even look at the PPC, and some of them weigh it much heavier than others. So I'll say that.
Yeah. Commissioner Lucas, I see your hand back up.
Yes, I'd like to see the density for the proposed changes of getting rid of Station 3, as well as getting rid of the station, what is this one, 5? Yes, Station 5. Because the impact, while it is certainly different in terms of the composition of those areas, there's still significant concerns to be held when we're talking about taking down a station, no matter what neighborhood it's in.
Commissioner, I do want to be clear. We're not proposing to do that. This is an example of why we're set up the way we're set up. So we wanted to show what happens to response times and turnout times if we were to consolidate a station. And it's just more of this is kind of the data that supports the way we're currently deployed.
Yeah.
So there's not a proposal on the table at this point to eliminate or consolidate a station.
And I'll have to confirm, and I did mention this to Chief Collier, but I do believe I had another official in the county state that a lot of the state insurance companies really don't look at ISO. They kind of look at actual number of claims. But I know to some degree, Chief, we spoke about that. I don't know if you can expand on that statement. I think it's a fact, but it doesn't really matter.
Right. Yeah. And I think Commissioner Granger's spot on with it. It's really up to the independent insurance carrier on what rating or whatever data they want to look at to set their insurance rates. And unfortunately, that fluctuates heavily. But I know for the fire department itself, we have to follow ISO until something else comes in.
Yeah. And I think, I think in the conversations I've had with the community, I think, and you look at this example, I mean, I think a lot of people kind of view insurance as, kind of a racket, maybe to some degree with all these outside factors. But I think when you live inside of a municipality, I think the big thing is the response times. And, what is the expectation of our community and of the elected officials as to what type of response time do you want from our fire department? And I think that's the discussion that we need to have to that end. Commissioner Street, you did make a comment, and we just wanted to kind of clarify that. You said that Bay County has more municipalities than any other county. I don't know if you meant that maybe that has a fire department, because I mean, there's some of the counties have 25, 30 plus municipalities in them in Central and South Florida and stuff. So I didn't know, maybe we
35
misunderstood.
municipalities in a county? I don't know of a single one that has that many municipalities in a county.
Palm Beach County has 38 municipalities.
Yeah, so
Really?
We thought we might have misunderstood you. So obviously Palm Beach County is much bigger than Bay County, but
well, my point is, response time takes into account our mutual aid agreements. And so if we're going to show, I get that it doesn't affect the ISO rating, but if we're talking about level of service, we have, if we're going to, you have to know define what the win is. Is the win lowering the ISO rating, or is the win having the best response times that we can? Because if we have the best response times, we're going to rely on the closest fire station to whoever is there. And that's our response time. So it's not like Lynn Haven doesn't come into play into this, or Callaway or the county or anything else like that. So I guess that's what I was more along the lines of the point I was trying to make is, if we're solving for response times, we need to count in mutual aid. If we're solving for ISO, I understand why we can't take that into account.
I think the only challenge to that, though, is the mutual aid agreement is we get there first, and then we're like, hey, we need help.
Correct.
Please send
There's two different types of agreements. So a mutual aid agreement is just like Mr. Hayes just said. So when we arrive on an incident scene, we go, hey, we have way too much going on. We still need to provide coverage for the city, but we need more personnel, more apparatus, equipment, so on and so forth. That's when we will make what's called a mutual aid request. We'll call the county and say, hey, I need a unit from the beach, or I need a unit from Lynn Haven. Then those units respond several minutes later. An automatic aid agreement is completely different. So we only have an automatic aid agreement with Bay County Fire Rescue as of right now. And it's kind of twofold. First of all, when we absorb the interlocal service boundary agreement for the Northwest side, that is still county property, but we are the primary response agency for that area. So anytime a call goes out in that area, we're initial response, but the county responds at the same time with us automatically. And then that's reciprocated for Panama City North. Bay County provides service with us as we're responding to Panama City North. And in most cases, they beat us there, just like we beat them there on the Northwest side. Does that help with our ISO rating? Not much, because we're so far outside of our response times for that requirement. It's not really going to do anything. Their closest station, again, is off of East Avenue and 231. Their next closest station is Bayou George. So obviously response times are going to be delayed from all agencies, and that's if they are available. They will not respond if they don't have coverage or if they don't have units available. So that's the difference between the two types of agreements. We do not have an automatic aid agreement with any other agency.
Commissioner Granger?
I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. So I think what we should do here is we should make it very clear, and I know Jared mentioned this before, but we are not suggesting getting rid of any fire stations. We're just simply showing what if scenarios if this were to happen, because I can tell you, like, I would not support getting rid of a fire station in Fire Station 5. Mainly for these reasons here that we see the impacts here, but the solving for the ISO, I think, is probably the best path here, because like Commissioner Street, you were saying, solving for just response time. I was going to kind of go into that too, but they've already gone into all that. I don't need to repeat it. But solving for ISO results in a financial impact to our citizens. Maybe not every single citizen, because we would have to do extensive research and surveying to find out how much are you saving on your insurance. And I mean, it's virtually impossible. But having the ISO rating, I believe, allows our insurance rates to be lower than what the same exact home would cost outside of it. Anyway, I'll leave it alone.
All right. Commissioner Street, do you have another question before he moves on?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Brian, I hate to say it, but I'm from the opposite perspective. I'm like, solve for response times. ISO is too ambiguous. And so it's hard for me to quantify that to our citizens on what it's affecting, what it's not. Now, if we can get some real data that shows this is how much a citizen is saving with our ISO rating being attached to this, then I'm all about solving for ISO. But even in this conversation today, like we're admitting that there's no standardized approach. Some people go with how many, I mean, there's just, it's all over the map. The thing I can solve for that's very tangible is response times. And so whatever is going to improve our response times, like it may look better for us in response times for the area that we just identified in Benicia Villa to partner with Lynn Haven and find a way to improve that response. We may get better service to our citizens doing that than it is with Station 5. And there may be an improvement to that. But I do think it's identifying the win, and where I'm at is I'm with the win that is most clearly and tangibly identified, and that's response time. So that was kind of my feedback, and I think it's just a point we just kind of disagree on, and that's okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Mayor Branch, you just have so much. You got a busy background, and your hand kind of blends in. Maybe use the yellow hand. I apologize. I didn't see it.
I've been very quiet this whole time. And then you go ignored me. I'm just joking. So you said there was a mutual aid agreement and then there was another type. What was that type called?
It's an automatic aid agreement.
Automatic aid.
Yes, it's a set agreement that says, hey, when either one of us respond to either one of our areas in these certain locations, we're automatically going to send units from our agency and their agency.
Is that unusual? I mean, so like my thought, I mean, and I echo what Josh is saying and what Granger's saying. The seemingly we get better response time if we have mutual aid or mutual. I've already forgotten the word. Mutual, whatever it's called, with Springfield and Lynn Haven, and I don't know if those how those deals are worked out or why haven't we done that in the past? Or we just just curious. Is it?
Well, you have to look at each municipality differently. So right now, Springfield only has one station with 2 apparatus for their service area.
Yeah.
Lynn Haven has 2 stations with a handful of apparatus for their service area. Then you start looking at their locations. What's the trade-off that we're getting for the level of service that we're looking for based off of what their response times are going to be. Yeah. And so geographically, they're kind of put out into the ether, so to say. Yeah, the mutual aid aspect is great, but for the automatic aid, it's really not going to have any significant impact for us.
Response time.
For response times, yeah. The only thing that would give us is knowing that another unit's coming to give us more personnel.
But Springfield has one on 3rd Street that's just like 4 blocks above the paper mill, north of the paper mill.
Yes, that is their one and only station for their coverage area.
Meaning the entire city.
For the entire city.
Yeah.
So again, each municipality has to look on their end. Is it beneficial to enter into an automatic aid agreement? Sure. Yes. Would Springfield love for us to provide coverage for them to certain parts of their city? I'm sure they absolutely would. Would they be able to reciprocate that where it's balanced? There's no telling.
Well, I mean, I guess my point would be feel encouraged to have those conversations and right. If you don't have them, we don't know. And maybe they're waiting for us to say something or whatever, but certainly we can lend coverage to them. They can lend coverage to us. Oh gosh, there was one more thing I was going to mention. Are we going to get to, there's like fire rescue and there's fire departments. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of 2 slightly different things. Are we going to talk about the different types of fire? Are those the only 2 different types? Or are there more types of fire departments?
I would say that's your 2 primary. So we are a fire department. So a majority of our training, our focus is on firefighting skills. Yeah. We are not a fire rescue. We don't do EMS transport. So we're not considered a fire rescue, or we've not made that transition. But our apparatus are equipped with EMTs, so we do respond with our apparatus at the basic life support level to medical calls. So essentially, we are faster than most EMS units. We arrive on scene probably 98% of the time prior to them arriving on scene, and we provide that advanced level care and stabilization before they're able to get there.
Yeah. I've never put a fire out in my life. Actually, no, I have. I was cooking bacon one time. Flour, not water. So I would be curious with response times. To me, it'd be interesting to see response times for fire using ladder trucks and response time for medical emergencies using smaller trucks or EMS services in these sort of blended models in fire rescue. Because you know, the trade-off is we have this response time of the ladder truck to get all the way through Sweet Bay, but it seems like the use case of most of the calls are, oh my gosh, someone's having a stroke, and potentially get there faster with a response time with a blended model of fire rescue with a smaller truck that can navigate the streets in tighter areas and urban areas.
Yeah, most departments don't do that. Either they stay the way they are or they commit fully to the EMS service. That's why you don't see a lot of quick response vehicles doing that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cost that goes into that because you start throwing the name rescue on the side of something, the cost exponentially increase.
Really?
Plus, there's an increase in personnel cost. So that all that we have to take into account. You know, is there a trade-off of us running our trucks a little bit more, having a little bit more increased maintenance costs versus hiring a whole nother shift with personnel, equipment, training, certifications, and everything in between.
And currently, we do, the county pays for EMS and we pay them. How does the EMS work just in general in the county?
So the county absorbed EMS from Bay Medical Center at the time many years ago. So they are the primary agency in the county. So they have agreements with, was it Lifeguard? So Lifeguard helps backfill any EMS calls that they can't fill, and they help them with interfacility transfers. I think it's important to note that Bay County has done a very good job of running their service. They're just overwhelmed. We have close to 200,000 residents in the county. Most people don't know this. There's between 7 and 8 EMS units covering the entire county daily. So it's not uncommon for them to go status zero, where they're holding calls because they don't have units available. So that's where the fire departments have come in heavily, is to provide that first initial response of care and to stabilize the patient to the best of their ability until they can be transported by EMS. So that's why you've seen a lot of departments transition to a fire rescue model, is they've absorbed that service because they're running it already.
Fascinating.
All right. I think we had Commissioner Lucas with her hand up, and then Commissioner Granger, and then Commissioner Street.
Can we go back to the comparison of Station 3? Let's look at that. And some numbers I'd like to see is density. I mean, we can track time because that's an ISO concern, but what are the numbers? Who's calling fire most often from Fire Station 3 or Fire Station 5? I'd like to see those kind of numbers as well. So
if you look right here, I was going to get to it, is the current workload. So no, I don't have the demographics of our service areas per se. But what I can show you is what is our call volume in each one of these response areas.
okay.
So this shows, each little shaded color red designates, how many calls did we go to last year in this area. And as you see, we do have little dense pockets, not only in Station 3's area, but 1's area, 4 or 5, and Station 2. You'll see that dark redded area in Station 2's area, and that's because we absorbed the northwest side from the county. So we're the primary response agency for all fire and medical calls.
So, but this doesn't, this shows me the stations, but it doesn't show me the geographical lines like I saw in the other ones.
Oh.
The overlay of where the areas are. Right. So this shows me Station 3, current and proposed, but it doesn't show me workload, I guess.
No, the other slide I just showed you was the actual workload. This is just what your response times will turn to.
Okay.
Commissioner Granger?
Did you do the what if scenario with all the stations?
We did not. Taking out any one of the other 3 stations is pretty detrimental.
Okay.
Yeah, so Station 1 and Station 2 are our 2 largest stations. Stations 1, 2, and 4 share most of the workload for the city on calls. So no, we did not do the analytics on those.
Okay. Well, looking at the different fire stations in that Panama City Station Fire, or Fire Station 2, Fire Station 5, and then Lynn Havens all the way over, that's northeast of the hammocks. They're spaced pretty evenly apart. So I hope that nobody is seriously considering doing away with station number 5, given that that is one of the areas of that we're going to see the most growth in the entire city. So,
Commissioner Street? No.
For me, only thing I'm evaluating is response time. I haven't looked at any of these stations. This is where it's at, but I do think that we need to take mutual aid and response aid on automatic aid should come into play and what that scenario would look like as far as in helping us moving forward in our responses. So that's kind of my take on it. But I did want to ask the question, going back to what Alan's question was on the how is EMS funded? So like not fire's funded through our ad valorem and the fire assessment for Panama City. How is EMS funded?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's part of their MSTU funding or if it's through other county taxes. That's something we would have to look at. But I do know that when they absorbed the EMS service, they did enact an ordinance that stated that they will not, if you are a Bay County resident, you are not charged for that service.
Okay.
Right.
So that means like does that mean, well,
It means
we
if
can
you
get some
call for an
research,
ambulance, you're not being charged.
yeah. And is that only if I'm a homestead or is that anybody?
That's anybody. If you are a county resident,
So if you're like at a condo out on the beach, you could potentially be paying something towards that.
yes, unless they can confirm that you are an out-of-state resident
Okay. All right.
or out-of
Okay.
county.
It'd just be good to understand how that's funded, to understand, okay, like, is there a point in time that EMS folds into fire, or is there a point in time that EMS folds out of fire? Because it kind of seems like we're in this limbo point right now of just trying to make it work.
Yes, and my understanding is EMS is with fire. It's a sister division within the emergency services for Bay County. So it's two separate divisions. You have the fire division, EMS division. Just like if we were to absorb EMS into our agency, I would have a fire division and an EMS division.
All right. Commissioner Lucas, then Mayor Branch.
So looking at the numbers for the first-time unit travel time on calls, the greater than number under scenario of getting the current one that's on the screen is that it would affect 417 calls currently. Correct.
Yes.
And that number, when we looked at the other Station 5, was 188. So I'm just looking for points of comparison that show what the current impact would be, understanding that in the future, there will be more in that Station 5 area.
Yes. So the 188 was specific to structure fire responses. This model is based off of all calls that we go on. So fire, EMS, whatever it may be. So that's why you're going to see a difference in the numbers.
And I get numbers that I can jive, right? You're going to give me a greater than 540. This is 188 on one current deployment versus potential. But the numbers that you give me in the grid are not the same calculation.
Well, because it's two different data sets. One's for structure fires only, and one is for everything.
Okay, so the one for structure files only under current deployment that we're looking at now.
No, this is for all calls. The one we're looking at now is for all calls. The one we were looking at before
For Station 5.
is for structure fires only.
Okay, so that number is 188. And for what's the comparable number for Station 3 scenario? Yeah, I'm looking at the same 417. So that is this
Right.
it?
So that number is based off of all fires that have occurred in the city limits. So that may include calls in Panama City proper, Panama City North, all that good stuff. So this is just taking the average of them per se, and what would that turn into if you moved this equipment in this apparatus? You know, what percentage of those, or what would your distance now be for response time to these 188 calls that may occur in these areas overall?
Okay.
Mayor Brandt?
Yes. Going down the same line of Josh and EMS and fire and number of calls, I guess my concern is the number of calls if we're not truly differentiating fire versus everything else. Potentially we might be overstaffing equipment and people in areas. I'll give you an example. I mean, I'm right here in my house, Laverne Avenue, 3 days a week, ladder truck to the towers down there for a medical emergency. And so, and I'm not saying we get rid of that station, but if we're not segregating the data of medical calls versus fire calls, potentially we're staffing up equipment and personnel to not serve that need of what the actual calls are. The other thing I want to point out was, Granger, to your point with Sweet Bay, is the density of homes, and correct me, Chief, if I'm wrong, the density of homes and people in that area could have, you have one fire starts at one person's house and it spreads faster, as opposed to Kings Point, where I used to live, which is these half-acre lots. Houses are very far apart, which you wouldn't potentially have a faster spreading fire. So the argument to never get rid of Station 5 in that new urbanism area is, to me, not a fire chief or anything like that. You would want to have you have more density of people, so you wouldn't want to get rid of that department. Was my assumptions wrong?
Yes, sir. For that part, it was.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Spreading of fires?
Yeah, it's called a conflagration.
Inflagration.
Yeah, and to your, I know you raised that, we're not really separating fire calls based off of EMS calls.
Yeah.
We absolutely do that, but that's typically done on our end. We break that down to every specific type of call that we go on a monthly basis to kind of see what we're doing. Typically, we just clump it together of, hey, we ran this many fire calls versus this many EMS calls. Now, when we get really granular, yes, I can tell you how many structured fire calls we went on, how many MVAs we went on, how many complaints on burning did we go on.
Yeah.
All of that, I can get really granular.
Tell me more about the inflagration.
Conflagration.
So fires don't spread like the Great Fire of Boston. The fires don't spread anymore like that.
Can they? Absolutely, they can. Yes. Yeah, it just depends on the right conditions.
Yeah,
Yes, they can.
Is that building materials are becoming less combustible?
They are in some cases. It just depends on what's being used. I can tell you most residential homes, no. And typically a fire can spread through your house within 2 minutes.
All right. Mr. Street? Hey, Commissioner, you're muted. All right, I'm having some trouble. How many more slides do you have, Chief? Before I know we get
A handful.
There we go.
I can go
Yeah.
through 'em.
okay.
I don't know why it was froze for a second. No, a couple of years ago, you guys brought together a plan that had a new fire station going across from Sweet Bay, which is right on 390, maybe about a mile from Station 5. Has that plan been abandoned, or is that still sitting on the shelf someplace?
Yes and no. So the plan has been abandoned. Initially, when we were entering into the CDD with Sweet Bay, they were going to give us a plot of land to build a station and help us with that. Obviously, things have changed, so that has no longer come to fruition. And we actually identified through this adaptive modeling program that yes, that location would have worked, but it was not the best location. And actually, the best location is to build right across the street from current Station 5. So we anticipate improvements into the Sweet Bay area when they build that service road to connect to Jackson Way. So that still gave us the coverage we needed for Venetian and everything north of there, along with providing good protection for Sweet Bay.
I was also aware of the county purchased a large amount of land right off of 231 and Transmitter and East Avenue between there, about 100 and something acres. I think I recall reading that they were talking about putting a fire station there. Has there been any conversations about that? And you
No,
guys
sir.
dialogue, David? Okay. All right. Just curious.
No, my only understanding, I think that where they're trying to build right now is in front of the airport to help service Margaritaville.
All right. Why don't we try to get through the rest?
I'll get through this.
It's all good.
It's a
Thank you
lot.
so much.
Again, this slide just shows what the current workloads are, and just take into account that if we did lose one of these stations or both or whatever it may be, that workload does not change. That workload just transitions over to another station and the personnel already there. So to kind of frame that for you, this is our call volume that we had for the last 5 years and the calls that we're up to this year. So you'll see every year we have seen a significant increase in calls. 2024 was our biggest year with almost 6,000 calls. We are pacing that already in 2025, and we are anticipated to have over 6,000 calls by the end of this year. So every year we are adding more and more with our current deployment with what we have. So it's only going to increase and get more substantial on our end. So Panama City North, we've talked a little bit about this. So right now, Station 4 off of Jinx and 19th is the primary coverage area for Panama City North. And they respond to anything that's, a single unit response, a medical, a small MVA, service call, that type of stuff. Anything requiring more than a single unit response, Engine 3 joins in on that because they're the next closest unit. And then for any structural fire call that we have out there, Stations 4, 3, Tower 1, and Battalion 1, which are housed in Station 1, all respond as part of our initial response force. Along with that, Bay County helps us provide automatic aid response to Panama City North. And so they send the typical same response units for any structure fire or any significant medical call that's occurring in Panama City North. Again, that's only if their units are available. It's important to note that currently our average response time to anywhere in Panama City North is between 14 minutes, 28 seconds to 23 minutes and 8 seconds. And that's because of distance and traffic and time of day. So that fluctuates all the time. So looking at the bottom, this is from NFPA 1710, which deals with volunteer departments on some cases. But it gives you what your response time should be to rural or remote areas. So right now, Panama City North is considered a rural area because it has less than 500 people per square mile. So our response time to first unit on scene is supposed to be 14 minutes. And as you see, we're out of that window, but we're trying to do whatever we can to narrow that gap and get it down. Where we need to start being a little concerned is when does ISO start looking at giving this its own standalone rating? That part I don't know. I've heard that sometimes when you move to that suburban urban type interface, that's when they're really going to start looking at you and separating those numbers and start rating you based off of your response in that area. We are not there yet. We are considered a rural area just like Margaritaville, and that's how we currently respond. So kind of the last part of this is most of y'all know that we're going through the accreditation process. And part of that, we have to do a 5-year strategic plan. We've done one in the past. We're up for it right now, and we're in the process of developing that. And through the accreditation process, one of the requirements for us was to go out and elicit external stakeholder feedback. So from our citizens, not only our employees, but our citizens. So we asked them a myriad of questions. And on this first slide, the first question we asked them was we wanted them to rate what program that we're already currently providing. How would you rate that program? How important is it to you? And as you see out of the responses that we received, fire suppression, medical response, and disaster response were all maxed out. Everybody wants us to continue those. And disaster response is anything from any of the storms, ice storms, hurricanes, floods, that type of response. Up next was specialty response. This is our special teams and the extra services that we currently provide on the department. And then after that, it's our fire prevention code compliance and public education. The next question we ask them is what are their expectations of the fire department? And these were not predisposed selections. These were actually handwritten responses or typed responses from the individuals that completed these surveys. And then all we did was take that information and we rated it. So from their most important all the way down to their least important. And as you see, their number one priority and expectation from us is quick response times. And we are currently meeting that with our current averages. And obviously we want to keep moving forward to ensure we're working on those and getting those response times down. And then it goes on from there. Then we asked them, what are your areas of concern? Again, these were handwritten responses. Again, lack of funding, outdated facilities, hydrants not working. We know that's an ongoing thing. Not enough staffing. They want to see more medical service, so on and so forth. So all of this information we're going to take into account while we formulate our plan. And this will drive what we do for the next 5 years. And we will be, as a department, we'll be presenting this plan to the commission. So y'all are fully aware of the direction we're looking at going that coincides with the direction you're wanting us to go. All right, so lastly is just kind of brief overview of some of the extra duties that our personnel do. All of these are voluntary based. As you see here, we have an urban search and rescue team. They have 6 disciplines that they have to have. So high and low rope rescue, tall buildings, towers, that type of stuff, confined space, trench, vehicle machinery, swift water rescue. That's a new component that we've added on, and structural collapse. Right now, our technical rescue team is considered a type 2 technical rescue team for the state of Florida. We are one of 46 in the state that have a TRT team and one of a few that are in our region. So our region extends from Pensacola all the way to Tallahassee. Recently, we just found out that our swift water team that just got certified is now a type 3 deployable asset. And it's only one of 7 in the state of Florida and only 2 in the region. So our USAR team has done a phenomenal job. And I'll say that this team is highly important with everything that is going on with FEMA and the uncertainty of its future. A lot of this burden for response and deployments, not only statewide, but nationwide, are going to fall back onto the states and the local municipalities. And the reason for that is funding. It's cheaper to send a TRT team than it is a large task force team of 200 people out of state or even in state. So I would foresee that our team is going to be deployed even more than what it has been. And again, we've been deployed around the region and throughout the state 15 times and 5 times statewide for disasters in the last 2 years. Fireboat team, we've got 17 personnel spread out amongst our 3 shifts. Of course, ongoing training, but we cover all waterways, all the way from the intercoastal at West Bay to the Bailey Bridge to the Tyndall Bridge, all the way out to the pass. We are the only agency that has a fireboat vessel capable of flowing water. We obtained this vessel through the port security grant from our port 2 years ago, placed it in service. We had one prior to that we obtained through the port security grant. It's important to note that all of these teams that I'm going over, yes, they are funded out of the general fund that we have budgeted every year, but these teams have been equipped, they've been outfitted, and most of our costs are minimal just due to maintenance and routine replacement. But you'll see that we are responsible for covering 75 nautical miles of waterways in the county. I'll tell you that most of our calls happen south of the Hathaway Bridge over to Tyndall and to the pass. Mostly it's Shell Island. Our crews actually went out today for a medical emergency that was a trauma alert. So the Coast Guard was not able to enter the waterway where the individual was. So they called us. We were able to get them and provide care to them. Then we have our dive team. We have 12 certified personnel. They do everything. Open water advanced rescue overhead. They're even cave certified, and that's because we have to enter vehicles, so we have to have that level of certification. And they're fully encapsulated hazmat suits because we treat our waters as contaminated at all times for their safety and for the safety of others. The cool thing about this team is when it was formed, one of our current battalion chiefs drafted what's called the JAWS agreement, the Joint Agency and Water Strike Team agreement. It's the first agreement that's ever existed nationwide. And essentially, it's a collaborative effort between the agencies you see listed. All of us train together. We share equipment. We share technology. We deploy together. It's been a phenomenal relationship. This agreement has gone very well, so much so that they actually did a presentation on it to the federal government, and they're looking at implementing it as a nationwide model, and that came from here. And then you'll see some of the notable call-outs that we've had. The biggest one is really in 2015 when we were the primary recovery agency for the Black Hawk crash that happened outside of Edmond. And lastly is our peer support team. For anybody that's familiar with the fire service, mental health and wellness has become a massive thing. We are on the forefront of that as well. This is completely voluntary. Our personnel are not compensated for this program, and it does not cost any money. But essentially, this program is meant for our personnel to identify anything pre-incident or accident or anything that may occur. It's more of a preventative tool. It's also used at the state level. You'll see that in, I believe it was 2022, we were deployed with the very first peer support team for the state. So we had several personnel that went with that. One of our members has taken it upon herself, has actually gotten her dog certified as a emotional support animal, and is deployable throughout the state now. And she is awesome, and they do an amazing job with the peer support. Any questions? It's a lot.
Commissioner, Commissioner Lucas started speaking, and then Commissioner Street.
Okay. I Sulfur X or Sulfur Y. That's the conversation that's come up a couple of times. Are we solving for the ISO, or are we solving for the response time? But the current deployment and potential what-if deployment were considered hypothetical. But we do have a real question before us with both of these scenarios. Is that not correct?
I would say no. I would say that if you're comfortable with leaving the way the department is now, your response times are only going to remain the same, if not improve over the coming years. And that's because of how we're currently established, where our departments are located, our equipment and staffing levels.
Commissioner Street?
So I got my preliminary budget obviously reviewed today, and there's unfunded needs. You guys are showing us what your requests are. I believe, and you can correct me, Chief, on exactly what this amount was, but I think it's somewhere between 10 and 14 million is what you're seeing as your unfunded need. Is that the correct number?
Oh, yes, sir. From our capital improvement plan, yes, sir. Roughly about 12 million.
Okay, 12 million. So is Panama City North driving, and the projections and growth driving most of that $12 million?
No. Some of that growth is actually because of down here. So when you actually break it down, what I've done over the last couple of years is I've asked for funding to be set aside to remodel a lot of our stations, if not rebuild. And in some of that, like Station 1, we know what's going on with that. That's in being remodeled right now or being updated. The one station that I really want to rebuild is Station 4. So let me go back to one slide that we didn't get to. It's out of thing.
Do you have a number on Station 4? on what you're, because we're taking care of Station 1. So do you have a number of what you're?
Yeah, I want to say it's between 2.5 and 3.5 million. And the reason for that is it goes back to our total response times. So where we lose some of our benefit to our ISO rating is the current deployment of our tower truck and our battalion chief. Since they're housed at Station 1, any calls that happen in 5's area or 2's area, their responses are delayed because of distance. So we've been wanting to redo Station 4 so we can actually move tower and battalion to that station. And long term,
What's the other?
well, sorry.
No, you were. I was just wondering what the other 9 million is then.
No, it has to do with that rebuilding of Station 5. We need to add on to Station 2, and then that accounts for some of setting money aside for Station 6 and equipment and apparatus for Station 6.
What's your next largest beyond Station 4?
Largest station?
No, your next largest unmet need beyond Station 4. So Station 4 is 3 million. So what's the next one after that?
I'd probably say Station 5.
Now, how much is that one?
The initial cost estimate we had to rebuild that one was between 10 and 13 million.
Which page are you on?
Yeah, that was going to be my question, Josh. What numbers are you looking at?
So this is in our budget stuff that we just got today. So the staff has put together unfunded needs, which are driving. We see this number that has, this is what the budget needs to be to meet the needs, and this is what the budget we can actually afford and balanced is.
So
I think they know that. They're asking what page, Commissioner Street, specifically
that's
what
great.
page.
I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going by memory. That's why I'm asking these things. So,
Oh yeah, I'm not seeing a $10 million.
Jared could probably tell you. They've got their budget book in front of them.
All right, we'll find out real quick. Commissioner Lucas?
Yeah, that was my question.
Okay.
I don't have the unmet needs report that's being referred to.
Yeah, the last 5 years, that request has been made each time I've done the budget to start setting funding aside for these projects because we know they're going to be costly. We know costs are going to increase and it takes time. And we were looking at ways to minimize the impact to the overall budget while still setting funding aside. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that. And we've done a really good job in the way we operate with what we have, and we're going to continue to do that. The goal is to, eventually start setting funding aside so we can start working on these projects for renovation and rebuilding.
So the reason why I bring attention to it is because we have a need that there's no way to fund. Like there's literally no way to fund this large of a gap. This is just a set aside for 1 year. And what the chief is saying is like, we have to set this aside for multiple years. So that number is actually larger than that $12 million mark. And what I'm driving to in this conversation is a couple things. Is if this is truly the need that's needed, we have to create something stable. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to see a $12 million unmet need each year. And it's only going to continue to grow because costs are going to escalate. It's going to continue to do that. So like a couple of things that I just wanted to point out, and this is Chief Jonathan for you guys to look at, is looking for Panama City North. Like what would it look like for a standalone rural rating just for that district, similar to what exists at Margaritaville? What would it look like to add automatic aid with Callaway and Lynn Haven? Callaway's got a brand new station right down at the end of Star Avenue that could be a part of this potential aid scenario. And then just continuing to expand that kind of dual purpose automatic aid agreement we've got with the county. And maybe we can extend it by putting the fireboat as something that we handle, coordinating future station planning, looking at this EMS response as something that's just not ours to solve, but also from a Bay County perspective in general. And then the last resort is whatever is driving this to this need point. If it truly is, this is how far we're off, is like the last resort is like looking again at the fire assessment or fire impact fee on new development. Because there's no way the general fund could ever absorb that much. And so I don't know what to do about that. And Chief, if you've got suggestions on that, but obviously when I see it, and I've seen it multiple years in a row, and so that's why I'm drawing attention to it. Like if this is the need that's needed, I mean, yeah, we problem solved this year for Station 1 with insurance proceeds, but I don't really have another solution unless we actually take the time to look at it and see, is it reasonable? Can we fund it? What's the mechanisms of funding to do it? And, you know, when you start talking about that number, then when I start talking about Station 5 or whatever, it starts to look like, oh, maybe Josh isn't that crazy to actually talk about some things on response time and trying to strengthen our mutual aid with others. Because, you know, the way that it's currently outlaid is unsustainable on the capital outlay side. So that was it.
To answer the question, what page is that on in the budget finder? That's your general fund summary page on general fund page 2. It doesn't show fire specifically. It shows all general fund capital. And you can see that delta 19.1. That's all requests from all general fund budgets. And then we can send out, and it's a pretty lengthy request sheet of what their capital equipment requests were. But as far as capital projects, we can send those out as well of what was requested.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Granger.
Yeah,
You mean to have your hand up?
thank you for pointing that out. I'm looking at page 34 and page 35 of the general fund, which is 2,200. What I'm seeing here is the capital outlay that was requested for 2026 was $359,900, and the proposed budget was $10,900. So
that's capital outlay as GASB defines it, which can be defined as software and some long-term subscriptions.
okay.
That would not be capital projects or capital equipment.
No, and this would have come. This request is for the 370 account as well for our capital improvement program. So the 350 that we may have had requested was for the capital requests out of the general fund. The other part would have been out of a different account.
We can get all those numbers to the commission.
This is all stuff that the staff accesses before it ever gets to us, but it does create it's delayed maintenance. This is how our infrastructure got into the place that it got into as a city. This is how this is the commissions that did not look at the capital outlay to determine, is the need something that we need? Is it sustainable? Are we focused on maintenance? Are we doing those things? It's easy to make a quick decision one budget year, but we also need to have a sustainable plan. So that's why I don't want to ignore the capital improvement outlay because we do need to figure out whether it's reasonable. And if it is, then how is it funded long term?
Yeah. Mayor Branch, is your hand up again, or is that from earlier?
Yes, that is me.
Yeah.
I want to echo Josh's sentiments. The $12 million, if we were to try to come up with $12 million, just to kind of set it, and we all know this in this virtual call, but for anyone listening, we bring in potentially almost $18 million of ad valorem taxes. We would have to almost double our ad valorem taxes to come up with the $12 million, which is not feasible. I'd love to encourage staff to explore options on the automatic aid agreement with surrounding cities. I think that's interesting and collaborative. I'd love to encourage staff to explore options on rescue, or maybe we don't roll that in-house, and maybe we just collaborate with the county, giving them a place to park their vehicle and house their folks. But collaboration, in business, what you find, and this is, I'm a businessman that's learning about government, that creativity is born in the constraints of things. And right now we have a budget constraint, and I know we can't come up with all kinds of stuff during the next 2 months, but ongoing in the next year, I'd love to see conversations happening, more virtual workshops about blended rescue departments and other collaboration with other cities, and just see what we can come up with, being a collaborative partner with other people.
And on that note, I'd like to say that Hurricane Michael put us in a position where we could see the devastation. What we're talking about now is that no-see-em, and it's not right here in front of us. And so perhaps taking a page from the response to Hurricane Michael to apply to this situation, it's got to be out of the box. We brought in Haggerty and others and helped us figure it out. And maybe that's a course of action to consider, if not this fiscal year, given our constraints, but certainly get in position to do that. Because you're right, we can't we can't double the fire tax and the ad valorem tax, or either one. So we've got to be innovative.
All right. Well, Chief, thank you so much for that presentation and your time. And like you said, we'll start tomorrow afternoon with the budget workshop, and the chief, along with all the directors, will be there to answer any additional questions. But David, great job. Thanks for what you and your team do each and every day for our city. So,
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioner.
yep. So,
And I'd like to encourage the mayor and Robbie, if you haven't visited the fire station or spent time with them, gone out on a call to do so. They'll take you up on the ladder truck and let you look at the city. It's quite a view.
Yeah. We'll hang them up there.
Thank you, Chief.
So, yep. All right. So, Mayor Branch, I know you also wanted to talk about just the city attorney, and I'll just turn it over to you, sir, in our remaining time. And obviously, Mr. Zimmerman is here. So
I was going to say that, no offense, Mr. Zimmerman, but firefighters are way cooler than lawyers.
I agree, Mayor. I agree.
No, I thought we were going to do a presentation of the proposal first.
Oh, okay. The proposal that I wrote, Mayor. Okay. You received it by email. I think it was last Friday. I sent it into Jonathan, and then it was forwarded to you. First, we consider this a privilege to be able to represent the city. We don't have a right to be here. We know that every day we get to come and help the commission and do the best that we can to help you achieve what you need to achieve. And we have heard the constraints, the financial constraints as well. And there was a suggestion, I know from some, and that city manager communicated, is what could we do as a city attorney's office as far as helping reduce or provide certainty in what our billings are. So quick history, won't plow territory that's already been plowed, but about last August, there were some questions about our billing since the hurricane, and I went over that, and essentially the message was you can reduce attorney's fees or legal costs by not doing anything. And obviously that was not an option after Hurricane Michael. You had to do something, and the city commission wanted to respond, did respond, and Burt Blue was able to. So at that time, we were on a lump sum fee, and that lump sum fee covered the core legal services, and then there were additional services that were provided on either an hourly basis. In the case of loans or bonds, it was a negotiated fee. And those special projects would be brought to the city commission, and the city commission itself would decide, yes, this is a project that's out of ordinary. And the thought was, by providing a lump sum fee, you're getting the benefit of almost an in-house situation. And then, just like if you had in-house attorneys, if you had things you couldn't handle or the workload was such, you would hire an outside firm to assist. So in this case, when I was hired as your city attorney in 2013, it was a requirement that I be affiliated with a law firm, and that the law firm is not the city attorney. I'm the city attorney, but the law firm is the support to the city attorneys, and the city attorney under the charter can also have other attorneys that assist it. So bringing back now to Hurricane Michael, it was obvious that the whole world was a special project. And so we went to the hourly billings, the same hourly rate that Mr. Rowlett Bryant charged when I came into office in 2012, and it hasn't been increased since then. I believe it is a discounted hourly rate. And so we have been billing on that. The services, the cost for services increased dramatically. There was in, I think, 20, let me get my dates right. In 2022, fiscal year, the total billings from Burke Blue was $1.8 million. That isn't from me. That is from me and members of my firm that have responded to the great needs. And if you were to look at that and say, well, how much of that was covered cost? And that was an excellent question that got asked. And how much of that would we consider special projects? I think approximately that year, it would have been around $800,000 of that 1.8 would have been special projects under the old definition. We don't have a definition today for it, but just looking at it from the past. The next year in 23-24, the total billings came down. And we always said that as we went through the crisis, on an hourly basis, the billings would come down. And it was 1.5 million. And of that, we would estimate that around 500,000 of that was, once again, special project type things. And then this year, we anticipate the total billings will be around 1.2 million. And correspondingly, the amount of that, it's part of that 1.2, around 250,000 would be special projects. So looking at that and trying to predict, what the needs are of the city, we proposed we would be coming to you with a lump sum fee of $850,000 if that's what you would like to go toward. That would provide certainty. It would be a lump sum, whatever it takes to get the job done, would get the job done. We'd have some carve-outs, but we'd come to you to identify what those are, the special projects. We got asked, well, what do you think that would be? Well, we don't know. We don't know what litigation will be next year. We don't know what other special projects you may want to do next year. But a guess would be another $150,000 or so on top of that. So we're happy to help, but I just want to emphasize this: money is a problem that we can solve by working with you. We can't solve a problem of you being unhappy with our service. We want you to be pleased with what we do, and we think you are. I think we got, it's not me, it's me, and we've got Natalie McSwain and Mike Burke and Joy Marler and Caroline Smith are the main lawyers that assist. They're not all, you see me all the time, you're stuck with me. The others you see bits and pieces of as they work on different aspects, but that's what you get when you get a law firm that helps. So we want to continue to provide the excellent work that we have been and respond to what you need. Happy to answer any questions now as we go forward, to have further talks as we refine this, but we did want to be responsive and make a proposal if that's what you'd like to see for next year.
Yeah, I'll go first. I had never, when we spoke a few weeks ago, you sent the document in and you called it a retainer. But it really isn't a retainer. It's like a fixed price tell us more about that, because I've never heard you explain what a retainer typically works. And
Right.
New sort of thing that we're proposing.
Yeah. You correctly, Mayor, understood what the word retainer means. And that you typically in the legal world, that means, well, I want you to go ahead and pay me a certain amount of money, but it's not, and I'll put it in my trust fund. And then when I earn it on hourly rates, instead of billing you, I'll just take it out of the money that I have. That's not what this is. This is a lump sum fee. Burke Ballou did this successfully for years and years when we were the county attorney, when I was the county attorney and the firm was, and we had a flat sum fee, and then certain things were carved out that were extraordinary. We did this for about 4 years before the hurricane with Panama City as well. So it covers everything that you need as far as legal services go. And if we feel that we've got some extraordinary, some special project, we'll let you know, we'll identify it. And an example would be the marina public-private partnership. I mean, that's not, hopefully we'll do it once and it will last for many, many years. And just like with St. Andrews, that was a 30-year agreement. St. Joe was a special project when we entered into a 55-year lease. Those are all things that we charge the same hourly rate, the discounted hourly rate, but it was a special project as we worked through that. Then we had a bride, and St. Joe started before Hurricane Opal. Hurricane Opal. I said that earlier. It's Michael, not Opal. It's Michael. But I do date myself. So it's a lump sum fee, and it's trying to be like having your own department. And just like your own department, if it becomes overworked or it's asked to do something it physically can't do, we just come and talk directly to the city commission.
Commissioner Hughes, I see you have your hand up, sir.
Yes, sir. Nevin, so in your explanation, what fees are covering is review of contracts, drafting and review of contracts. But then when you go to special projects, those are mostly contracts or leases. So what makes what contract would you draft different from a special project contract? What does that look like?
A special contract, well, it would be like the downtown marina lease agreement, some kind of long-term. But I'm not the one making that decision. It's up to me to come if I feel like it's extraordinary and it's going to take, months and just hours and hours of labor. I would come to you and talk to you about it. And we had maybe, I don't know, but we had some financings. And we had a few special projects before when I had the retainer with Panama City, had some litigation, but it wasn't that much. Now it'll probably be more, but just because of the nature of the city. This city commission, partly because of who we have, but also because of the situation the city's in, you have to be proactive. You are proactive. And being proactive means that you do need legal help as well as others. And just like with your public works department, you wouldn't expect your public works department to staff up engineers to handle the crisis that we had after the hurricane. So you have consulting engineers and you have CEI services that are provided. So we would, the actual definition, obviously, that was just an email that I wrote to throw out some ideas, and we would work that out.
Okay. And you base your number of 850 off of how many lawyers? How did you come up with 850? 850,000. Yes, sir. No, $850,000. How did you come up with that? You do it based on how many lawyers you've used over the last couple of years, or what?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you how we came up with it, and then also we look back at our time. But we think that even though we're not as large population-wise as the county, but the county has 3 lawyers. in an in-house setting. We feel that this Panama City, because of the uniqueness of where we are, you would also need equivalent of 3 lawyers if you had an in-house staff. And so you couldn't do an in-house staff with 3 lawyers for $850,000. It would be more than that. But we kind of looked at that, and we looked at what we thought was fair. We looked back at what we built in the past, looked at the difference between what we think would be the definition of covered services versus special projects or non-covered services, and discounted that further, hoping that we could help as we all work ourselves out of the financial straits that we're in right now.
Thank you.
So the $850,000 a year is based on the rate of two. I mean, it's blended among different personnel, but basically top line $275 an hour, going down $250 an hour. That's correct, right?
We looked at, no, not exactly. We looked at what it would take to staff an in-house situation. Then we also looked at our prior billings. So it's kind of, we looked at prior billings. We looked at, in other words, we believe that it's less than, how about this? A question was asked, well, what would be a non-covered activity, and compare that with what we've done in the past. There is no situation that I outlined where $850,000 covered all of the lump sum activities. It was always more than that. But we want to reduce it, and so we've looked at taking an in-house setting and reducing the amount to where we think it could fit. We just think we can make it work. So it wasn't a mathematical, we added up all of the hours that we felt would be considered part of the lump sum covered activities, and it came up to be $850,000. It came up to be much more than that, but we've really discounted it to make it work.
Yeah. Let me go first, Josh. Sorry. At the U.S. Mayor's Conference, there's sort of these standard questions you get asked whenever you meet someone. How big is your city? Weak mayor, strong mayor, and all the things. And what services do you have privatized? And one of the dinners I was at, the table was clear in there. They all had in-house attorneys, and I said, why do you have in-house attorneys? And they said it's about focus. And it's about having attorneys that solely work for you. And I don't really know, because I've never been the mayor. I went to the mayor like 80 to 85 days. You've been in-house, you've been third party. Is there a different working relationship being in-house versus this sort of blended third party privatized service we have?
No. And I say that because, you are getting total focus from Burke Blue, believe me. And from me, from Natalie, from the parts of the other attorneys. So we're totally focused, and I think any law firm, most of the, other than the county, the other cities have law firms that represent them, and they are totally focused as well because they're representing their clients. So I don't see that as an advantage, obviously, of in-house over outside counsel, that they're more focused. I can't imagine anyone being more focused than your city attorney and those that work with me to make sure that we have your best interest at heart.
Commissioner Street, did you have a question, sir? Go ahead. You're muted. Okay, yeah.
I did, and so I want to give some back history here. Is retainer agreement is something that I've challenged Nevin on for a couple of years now, and there's a few reasons why that this was the first step in a multi-year process. One is flat rates. They will in and of themselves drive reductions in times and efficiencies. And what it changes the way that we evaluate our decisions, our attorney, any support team, is it really is then from that point, it's not a cost issue. It's we evaluate service level. Like, do we get the value that we feel for the cost of the service rather than this hourly billing, whereas, you know, Alan or Janice or Robbie or Brian may come up with an idea that we go ask our attorney for, and then there's this billing process that goes on behind the scenes. And, you know, we've had previous elected officials that spent a lot of attorney time just from the questions that they ask, but also, you know, conduct. And so, you know, going to a flat rate fee eliminates that calculation from that, and it gets us to the point of we evaluate service. And so it simplifies how we evaluate our attorney. The second thing is, and I told Nevin this based upon the first draft of the agreement, that I would like to see is special projects only come into play when something takes over 10 hours to do. So if it's a P3 that takes less than 10 hours, we don't really need to be voting on adding more money into this lump sum agreement. That should be something that they figure out in their workloads and their time and achieve without having to come for a special projects. And so Nevin was at least amicable to that as well. And then when we get to a special project, I don't think we need to have a pre-approved rate. I think we should negotiate at that point. It should be based upon, you know, does the project make sense? Maybe 250 is reasonable. Maybe 300 is reasonable. Maybe 150 is reasonable. I think it depends on the project because, you know, some work may be more paralegal than it is actually attorney. Litigation may require a different specialization than, you know, than maybe what even exists inside of Burke and Blue. So I don't know that there has to be a set rate. It really is about if we pick a special project, there should be, and maybe it's a lump sum amount and we don't even have a rate with it. Maybe there is. So we'll kind of take that as it comes. And then lending, I hope that lending is very few and far between. And so I don't mind that not being in the retainer agreement, because that will again be driven by us and by the clerk on whether or not we actually entertain any lending options. But it should really, if it takes less than 10 hours, it shouldn't be an issue regardless. But I do want to give some like historical background to what I found in this process, because when I came in, legal fees were continuing to escalate. And I had a lot to do with Hurricane Michael, other agreements that were in place, but I've had some time to go back and do some research prior to that and prior to Hurricane Michael. And I'll point a couple of things out to you guys so that we kind of understand how we even got to this spot. Prior to Hurricane Michael, I mean, we had things where an attorney wasn't present at our planning board meetings. The CRA was handled by a separate board, and there was an attorney present at that. So there's been this new structure that's been created since Hurricane Michael that has an attorney present at virtually all of our meetings, including today. So that was one that I wanted to draw attention to. The other thing that's changed is also an increase in zoning changes and development agreements. If you go back and look at previous commission's agendas, the amount of activity that was generated by the city, both in economic growth, in like Triumph application, grant, you name it, all of these other legal documents, it was not at the same level or pace as what we're experiencing today. We've had a 10% increase in population. The staff has increased drastically. So guess what that means? It increases the amount of civil service that we encounter, which is something that our attorneys represent us in to defend the city's position on whether or not they hire and fire in the proper manner. You know, our elected officials are more active. Like, we create some of this work. So, which I don't think is a bad thing. And every ordinance that we pass requires a measure of enforcement that comes with that. So the more laws that get placed on the books, the more attorneys that it drives in that. So all of these things that are happening post Hurricane Michael was expeditious in that matter. These have all increased the amount of legal reliance that we have on. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I think in some ways there's some things that are good, like that, hey, like we should be doing this and we should have this ordinance on the books and we should have do these things. But then there's other aspects that growth requires that. I mean, our housing program has increased greatly. And as a result of all of the HRP, all of the additional 50,000 down, those were all contracts that had to be evaluated by our attorneys. And there are hundreds of them and millions of dollars that got evaluated in that process. So I just say that to point out that, you know, when I looked at things, I didn't necessarily think going back to the way things were before Hurricane Michael was realistic. Now, whether or not this number is realistic, that's something for us to debate. But I do think that the idea that things can just revert back to the way they were in 2017 really isn't realistic. It's not even really realistic to go back to the way things were in 2012. One other thing I wanted to say, because I made some notes as Alan, you were talking, in-house versus out-house. I do agree. I do agree that
Thank you.
Outhouse.
So I do agree that there is a measure of, and we've seen this happen, where our attorneys have to step back because they have conflicts with other clients. And that doesn't just mean Nevin, that could be any client. That could be in planning and zoning. We have an attorney that's representing a private client as they're representing the city in something, and so they have to remove themselves from conflict. That is going to exist as long as we have in-house and versus being out. And I think that goes to your focus point that you were trying to say, Alan, is you have someone's undivided attention and there's no way for there to be a conflict in that. I do think that regardless of whether we're in-house or out-house, that we're going to have a continuing services contract that will require us to contract with a firm. I mean, we're going to have some like that. We're not at the level that we can be at Tampa and have, 14, 15 attorneys on staff. The county has to use outside counsel for things, and that's going to continue to happen. So I just wanted to kind of give a background of kind of like where I've got, like, this retainer agreement is something I would have loved to have last year. And so I think the fact that we're here is a massive positive step. I do, inside of this, I also evaluate how much institutional knowledge is captured inside of our legal team right now. And so whatever we suggest in moving and things like that, it's obviously Nevin's been here longer than any of us that are sitting on this call right now. so there is value in having some of that historical knowledge. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to go kind of through my rundown and my thought process, and where I am in kind of my processing and thinking. And I'd love to hear others' thoughts.
I'd just like to make one, and Commissioner Street, I appreciate you bringing it up, and it goes to the focus question. I've been privileged. I think it was in April of 2013 when I was hired. I can recall 3 instances in the last 12 years when we had a conflict. And so when that occurs, identify it, we get outside counsel to help, and we move on. So it can happen. It has happened, but fortunately it rarely happens. But I just want to point that out.
Yeah. All right. I think we had Commissioner Hughes and then Commissioner Lucas and then Commissioner Granger. Go ahead, Commissioner Hughes.
So we're being asked to amend the original contract from 2013 for the 5th time. And I'd like to suggest that we start with a new document. And most of your amendments are removing lawyers and adding people and changing fees. And I just think having one clean contract would be a good idea. And then in the original one, you identify like Cliff Higbee as a litigator and some other people. I don't know if these other people are still around. I don't know if, and so do we want to identify people, or do we want to identify if we have to litigate, we're going to go outside? And hey, Cliff Higbee's really good. He's helped for the city a lot. And how would we do that? But I just think it'd be a good idea to clean it up and have one new contract.
I concur, Commissioner.
Okay. What about what about naming people, Nevin, as far as litigators? I mean, if somebody might retire, move, does that matter?
We were asked to do that by the city at the time. So I think the truth is, we have hired lots of litigators, but like when we were in negotiations with FEMIT, our insurance company, we ended up settling for $74 million out of a $95 million, I think, policy limit. And we used an attorney, very expensive, that they specialized in that type of work. And we used them to assist us. And we've had other situations where we go out and we just find the best attorney that helps assist us and you as we go through that. So even though they were named, and we have used Mr. Higbee, and he's done an excellent job, but the reality is that we've always brought to the commission who we felt was the best, and we've always gone with that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lucas?
Yes, I kind of came at this looking at from a qualitative perspective. I knew I could depend on my colleagues to go straight to the bottom line and figure out the numbers. But in looking at the qualitative of it, the responsiveness and availability to the commission, Nevin, you are on call, essentially. And even when you travel, you make time for us. And so I appreciate that. We've already touched on the institutional knowledge. You are the institution. So that's a positive. You've seen us through a really, really rough period. Question that I would ask Nevin to just talk to us about, wins and losses. Where would you say that you've really, and your team has been in there with us, and you look back and you go, that was some of our best work that we accomplished together. And where would you say, if I had a do-over, I'd do that one over?
That is quite a question, Commissioner. I appreciate it. When you think back, I think of reading FEMA regs when we had no power or electricity, and I was perched outside the trailer at the police department, and it was time to go to work. We didn't have a disaster consultant. So I think, and it wasn't me only, it was the whole firm just stopped and got involved. And we were able to determine, well, this is how we need to hire disaster consultants. We went through a selection process. This is how we have to make sure we don't have FEMA clawbacks. And, the audit period isn't over, but I feel fortunate you haven't read about Panama City and as far as the FEMA arena, as far as civilly problems with contracts or anything like that. I think we helped, wasn't us, but we helped staff in going through a good selection process for everybody we hired, for the competitive bidding we've done. We helped in the selection of good engineers. The city spent over $50 million just hiring engineers and CEI to help do this project. We went from a year, other than the wastewater treatment plant on 23rd Street, a big capital improvement project was maybe $2 million. All of a sudden, we're looking at $400 million, not on just capital improvement projects, but on recovery from the debris removal. I can't remember now how many millions of dollars we spent on debris removal, but I believe it was, I'll say 70 million. It wasn't 100, but it was more than 50, I recall. And we were able to do it correctly, get it, and also get reimbursed for that. So as far as stepping up and learning something that I never, and I did go through Hurricane Opal when I was the county attorney, but it was nothing like what we experienced with Hurricane Michael. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the team that we have delivered. Since then, we have all of a sudden, some years we hardly even had a zoning change. And so now in the rebuild, we're seeing all this activity. Mr. Fuller and his staff are great. Mike Burke, when he helped me when I was county attorney, he worked with the planning staff with the county. He's doing that again with the city staff. So you have somebody there where it really just wasn't a need, but we were able to provide that as we're part of the rebuilding. So whether it's zoning, whether it's procurement, and just working with the city council and the staff, I think it's just been a pleasure, and I think we've done well. As far as what I would do different, I don't know, Commissioner. That's a great question. I think I probably, as far as what I didn't understand the magnitude of what we were looking at right after the hurricane. I think we responded quickly to it, but at the same time, I was kind of in the daze as everyone else was, as far as just immediately getting to work and all. But we're here to help and serve and be creative, and we can help. And I think a lot of the staff that we've worked with has become used to the way, has been more sensitive as far as the legal issues involved. And they do a lot of the work. They make our job easier. You have Mr. Sean Self with procurement. His staff's incredible about how they can go through. And our role isn't creating stuff from nothing. Our role is just reviewing what they've already done. And I think that's what a good lawyer and a good firm can do is help train and then review the work that's already being done by the staff.
Well, thank you. That certainly is a good summary. Just one question. Looking at the litigation track record, would you say that Burke and Blue is helping the city to reduce risk or just kind of manage it? How would you see where we are,
I think by looking at litigation, the way you understand if you reduce risk is that hopefully you don't have a whole lot of litigation. Now, there are some things like that are insurance driven. It's we have a great HR department and a risk management department, and they help reduce litigation risk when it comes to equipment accidents, vehicle accidents, things like that. And of course, we have our insurance company provides good lawyers to assist in that. But then also we can, if you have good contracts, you get in front of things. Hopefully, you won't have litigation. We almost had litigation with our insurance claim after Hurricane Michael, but we didn't. We were able to, we had mediation. It was 3 days, tremendous swing in what was being offered to the city, and the city agreed to accept what was offered. So I think that our keeping us out of litigation, which we don't have that much of, is a testament to our success.
Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Granger?
I forgot what we was talking about. I'm kidding.
I'm talking about Mr. Zimmerman.
I'm joking. So I've said it before, and I'll say it again, that I don't like the idea of switching horses midstream. So I guess that kind of applies to attorneys as well. But yeah, anything that we can do to get the same services out of Nevin and his team for that would be much cheaper to the city is something I will support. And I will also echo back what Commissioner Street said, that we tend to add to this workload. and some of us in the past maybe more than others. So hopefully, moving forward with a deal structured in this manner, there won't be as much additional load added. That's all I really wanted to say.
Mr. Mayor, I know we've been just over a little over 2 hours between, two very big critical departments with the city, between fire and legal. You're in the dark now.
But not in the outings.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, whose idea was it to have such a late workshop? Brian?
Okay. we're gonna discuss that again tomorrow evening, as you and I spoke about earlier today, Mr. Mayor. So
No, I don't have any other questions. Yeah, I'm ready. Done. It's dinner time.
yeah. So is that an invite? We're all coming to your house for dinner? No.
If you want chicken thighs, yes, they're cooked right now. Come on by.
So I believe the next virtual workshop for the commission will be Monday the 4th. Is that the 4th is a Monday, I believe?
Oh, Josh Street.
Hang on. Go ahead, Commissioner Street.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to. Is there like an action step that might be suggested here? Are we looking at cost comparisons? Is there something that, like, I mean, the retainer agreement is one thing. I think we're all giving feedback to Nevin on that. Is there? I mean, I guess that's what I'm kind of at. Is there something we need to have in preparation for budget process that somebody may have thought of?
Okay, since you're asking for the budget, I'll grab that. So obviously we put in $850 in the budget. That was an initial number that we had kind of back of the napkin. I shared that with Mr. Zimmerman and Ms. Walder, and I spoke about it as we were kind of, crafting the budget, especially after the consensus we got from y'all at the, I believe it was the June 10th commission meeting, where, we're not going to increase the ad valorem. We're not going to increase, the fire assessment. We don't want y'all relying on reserves anymore. And so as we kind of looked at, kind of everyone across the city kind of pulling back on their ask and then taking that haircut collectively, we plugged in that number. So I think the question is the 850 a retainer plus some additional funds? And then Mr. Zimmerman proposes the 850 is actually the retainer. So if we know, there's more, that might need to come of that, do we go ahead and kind of work that into the budget now, or do we bring those items collectively to the commission, once a month or every other month, depending on a case by case basis, and kind of have that conversation on the dais? That's kind of from my perspective, but I would like Mr. Zimmerman to weigh in on that as well.
Obviously, this is a virtual workshop, so no action can be taken. However,
I wasn't asking for them to vote, Mr. Zimmerman.
I know. No action can be taken. But however, I think the path that I was on at the request of the city manager is to propose a contract with a lump sum in it. Obviously, due diligence would be to compare it to others, maybe, and make sure you're comfortable that that's a fair price, and then we continue to ferret it out as we go through this budget process.
Commissioner Street, I saw. Did your hand go up, sir?
I had forgotten to take it down. I'm good.
Oh, okay. So, we'll have an opportunity to speak about this tomorrow afternoon at the budget workshop. And then August 4th, that virtual workshop is, we're going to do kind of with housing, like what we did with the fire department today. Y'all could potentially follow up on that, that day. I won't actually be able to participate in that virtual workshop. I'll be on travel that day. But Mr. Jones will lead that for the city manager's office. We could follow up more on the attorney then, or again, we can kind of discuss it tomorrow. To Mr. Zimmerman's point, any formal direction would not be able to happen in this particular setting. But I think y'all have, my opinion, is y'all have a lot to chew on. That we can kind of address over the next few weeks. That was kind of my thoughts. If there's no more kind of ending questions here. Yeah, Commissioner Lucas.
If we don't put it in the budget, where does it come from? We pull it from the reserve?
Correct. Anything over and above the $850,000 reserve to Mr. Zimmerman and his team. Correct.
So a suggestion would be you would keep a contingency if you were budgeting for unexpecteds. You would have retainers. This is how much is outlaid for special projects. That's how you would do it in a normal budget process. Otherwise, if you're choosing to go into a budget year with an unfunded liability, you're just going to be tapping reserves, which is not
right.
A good plan.
Yeah, I'd rather see it in the budget.
Me too. Just for extra.
All right. Well, we will work to that. And like I said, I expect us to maybe we can get down in the weeds on that a little bit more tomorrow during the budget workshop as well. So kind of, Ms. Waldron is not here. She's listening, but she's not part of the actual workshop. But we'll be running through this one more time in the morning. And so we're not going to be adopting the budget until September. So we have a little bit of time. But I think this has been very helpful. And, Mr. Mayor, I don't know, other than housing, I don't know if there's another department that you would want to prioritize.
Yeah, I mentioned to Jonathan today, I'd love to have expanded other departments meet. So it's really up to discuss quickly what departments we'd like to have presentations of. Groveland, Florida, when we had to call them, they have a budget meeting for each department. It's weekly, isn't it?
They do. With kind of during the budget cycle,
Yep.
with,
the whole year.
with each of the elected officials.
So one of the departments should present. I'd love to get Parks and Rec to present. Any other departments, please?
Utilities, whoever takes care of the roads and the infrastructure, like to hear from them. And you said housing is coming, Jonathan?
Yeah, housing is August 4th. And I don't know. I mean, Parks and Rec is a pretty big one. Commissioner Street, your hand is up.
Yeah, I want to discuss debt because that's a big one, and definitely want to discuss housing. I'd love to see a presentation on those funds and how they're outlaid, as well as probably. I think if we could go through the capital requests, even though if they're unfunded with fire, I think that would be good after this conversation today to see what this $12 million is in detail so that we kind of have an idea. And if there's any other department with a significant unfunded proposal, I'd love to hear what that is and why.
All right, Commissioner Lucas.
Yeah, you and I have already talked about the MLK Rec Center, how we're only showing one employee in the proposed budget, and that that's a concern to bring on the kind of programming that's needed and how we go about staffing it, whether it's, phasing it through the year, but to go into the year with only one funded position, I think is not a good setup for the success of what we want to have happen there, and how we handle the MLK Rec Center as a predecessor to how we handle the Martin Theater, bringing it on board, spending tens of millions of dollars to get the buildings looking good. We got to look at how we staff it, program it, contract it to meet the expectations that we've set with the building.
So just as a situational awareness, so staff is already working on the request for proposals for the Martin Theater, and the goal is to have that out in the very early part of the fall, if maybe not even right at the very end of the summer. So mindful that we want to get a lot of runway in front of the opening of the Martin Theater so that they can start booking shows about a year out. So, all right, Commissioner Granger.
Yeah, eventually I'd like to discuss road and infrastructure and what our plans are. One of the last meetings we were talking about a 10-year plan for all roads. Not necessarily that all roads are going to get paved in 10 years, but that each road is looked at over the course of 10 years and assessed, triaged, and the worst is fixed up front. Also, I'll point out that some roads don't necessarily need the water and the sewer replaced underneath it, but they do need to be refreshed on top. So we can do more than one thing at a time. So that could be a good topic, I think, for us to discuss virtually.
Along that line would be that heat map that was created. Is it still viable, or along with the Commissioner Granger's suggestion that we update that as well to see if our hot spots are still the same or not? I would suspect there's been some changes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about the heat map that Mott McDonald did for utilities following the storm.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could probably, get them to update it. I mean, I think we know what's been replaced and what hasn't. I don't know that I would necessarily want to spend a lot more money, reassessing it until we've kind of fixed everything up. I don't think they know that someone's in here. But yeah, and I think that's about utilities. That we did do a pavement condition index shortly before Hurricane Michael, and we have that information as well. And so that's been helpful again with our FEMA claim with the roads. And right now we're working on a competitive request for qualifications in order to bring in an outside engineering firm to kind of basically design and help us with the bid docs for the FEMA roads project, which is the roughly 23 miles. FEMA will pay for that, but we have to go, unfortunately, we have to go through that process competitively. But we expect that RFP to go out any day now, or any week now, to that end. So I think you got a lot of those different things. And so, I hear different things here, but I mean, are we talking about, I guess in the next 90 days, I'm talking about maybe really 60 days, bringing in people for the purpose of helping shape the 2026 budget specifically, not necessarily, I think my personal opinion is we should prioritize that as rather than come up with a 10-year plan in the next 60 days. I really want to prioritize, get feedback on that 2026 budget that y'all have all now received your initial briefing from staff on. We'll have a time to, discuss that tomorrow. And hopefully maybe another workshop or two to that end. And so that's what I kind of want to focus on, just to kind of get some of that feedback. Of course, we're going to get a lot of it one-on-one, and we got some initial feedback from y'all today. But I just think that's kind of what I was thinking kind of this month and the next month before we get into September. Commissioner Street, I think your hand was up first, sir.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, are you getting like budget requests for us, prioritization? I mean, what you guys presented, was basically, hey, this is the staff, what we work to try to align to a balanced budget. But if somebody throws in, let's say, a $250 outlay on, special projects with legal, additional staffing, MLK, another roads project, I mean, it would seem to me we're going to have to take a look at each one of the departments again outside of that and find that margin to do those things. So that means, I guess I'm asking, how do you want to work this process? Because, I mean, we're not dipping into reserves this year. So you got what you got. And if we're not raising taxes, it means it's got to come from someplace.
Yeah. So, well, I would say, absent an emergency, I think we're not dipping into reserves. I think y'all would consider it if there was a legitimate emergency.
A hurricane, sure.
Yeah. Well, so yeah. So to that end, so yeah, I mean, things as we've said multiple times, things are going to be tight for a couple of years as we work to prioritize this. obviously the five of you are five very unique individuals, and y'all all have different perspectives, and so that's the job of of myself and Mr. Zimmerman and Ms. Smith to to kind of help navigate that, and so I think that's one of the things I'm very happy to to bring in the directors, as I've offered multiple times over the last year and a half, that if we do want to do a deep dive. But one thing I would say is keep in mind the directors don't necessarily have the vantage point that myself and the assistant city managers and Mr. Zimmerman and Smith have in kind of seeing that global picture of, engaging with each of y'all and kind of knowing your perspective in that end. So, and I say that as a former director of two different departments, obviously, when you're a director, that's your one particular job. And I think that, I think that was one of the reasons why we wanted to get away from the big 4 or 5 hour budget workshop and kind of, focus it in a little bit to some degree on that end. And so I think, we get feedback, from the departments, but, I really feel the city manager's job, working with the city attorney and the city clerk, is to navigate that, based on what we're hearing from the, hearing from the directors and department heads, but also what the people's representatives, the five of you, are hearing out in the community, and what y'all want to see us focus on, knowing that in some areas our resources are limited, and that the biggest expense is the human capital, as Ms. Smith has pointed out multiple times. So I think Mr. Hughes had his hand up. Josh, is your hand still up from a prior one? Okay, Mr. Hughes?
As a new commissioner, I really like the idea of being in front of, or bringing the department heads to us so we can learn more about them, about not the individual, but the department. And so, and while I agree with you that they don't see it globally, they have a very important job, and that's to make sure that their department runs well, it runs in budget. And I think, just from my perspective, talking to them and hearing from them and having questions with them would help me understand a little bit better, at least now, maybe 2 years from now, maybe not. But I just think that's a really good idea. And I think in this scenario, Nevin and the fire department were long, but I don't know that they, you probably do knock out 3, maybe, or 4 departments and just asking questions. But I would really like that. And I'm with the mayor on that. They're the ones that are asking for the money. Why? And, I just like to talk to them. That's just my thought. It would help a new guy, but it also helped me understand, because you need a forensic accounting degree to understand the budget. So maybe it'll help me understand a little bit better.
So I'll just add, Commissioner Hughes, and I think this, and we kind of you and I kind of talked about this some earlier today, and that is that it's, as your first year on the commission, it's so much has already been done by the time that you and the mayor were sworn in. Because we actually started this process back at the beginning of the calendar year. That was really what we were doing back in kind of February and March, when we kind of held that open house, and we kind of had all the budgets up there. We kind of showed the percentages. It was hosted by the city manager's office, as well as every single department, and the elected officials. And y'all were there, and there was that interaction around there. And we didn't just have the directors there. Most of them had their division managers as well, whether it be the deputy chiefs and their captains, the assistant directors, our engineering heads. So, I want to be careful that you don't feel that we're not, that we're not doing that this cycle. It's that process. And that was the feedback we got from prior commission, is that they wanted that to kind of move up in the process a little bit, rather than kind of just throwing all this at the end. So we got some feedback back in February from the elected officials, from the community, directly to the directors, and again, not only the directors, but also the division managers or superintendents at that level, in captain. So I think you'll see next year, for fiscal year 2027, I think you'll see that as kind of an incumbent at that point, there's going to be a lot more runway in front of you in the budget process, versus someone that gets sworn in And then, we're kind of like literally already in the fourth quarter with the budget
Well,
process.
and your point is very valid.
Yeah.
You're going to ask me to vote on something that I really don't have a lot of information on, and that
Yep.
helps me get more information on it. Since I was on the tail end, the mayor and I were, that would make my vote, make me feel better about my vote. Just remember, I'm an information guy, Jonathan, and and as much as I can get. And so your point is valid. We came in on the back end. All that's been done. Well, can you update me a little bit from their point of view, not from Jonathan's or Jared's point of view? Not that those are wrong. It's just that it just helps me. And that's just, I may not do it. It may not happen, but that's just my thought.
Right. All right. Commissioner Lucas?
I just want to ask my colleagues about the scenario that we're presented in this current budget of opening the MLK Rec Center with one paid staff, and that's the manager. That's a setup for, that's not a setup for success. And so I really would like to see us look at how we're going to bring staff on. If it's not fully staffed, what is the phase over a year, 2 years to get it there? We're already behind the eight ball. If we were going to do leagues and other things that have not yet been planned. So I'd really like to see the MLK Rec Center staffed for success. And I'm not certain that contracting a program out to an existing program is the best way as well, because we've got a promise that we've made that we were going to have, a rec center for all, and I think that's what we need to stay focused on. And so I am talking to my colleagues now on the commission in that regard.
Commissioner, unfortunately, I think the mistake was made when the vote was made at $20 million with no setup up front to fund it over the last budget cycle. And you're right. We need to open it with a full staff so that you get one first impression, and let's make it be the best it can be. And we might have to, we're gonna have to hurt somewhere, but we need that fully staffed. And if it costs $1 million, it costs $1 million. But that has to happen, and we got a budget for it going forward. We need more than one person. Yes, ma'am. Very much so.
Well, Commissioner Street, I just want to be clear. So we're not planning to open it with only one person. Just right now, the proposal, based on some of the feedback and where with the budget, it's adding one new person. But we have a decent amount of staff at the city and inside of Parks and Rec that we feel can be utilized and that have a fabulous skill set, being mindful of the budget and being mindful that we have said all along that we want to crawl and then walk and then run with this facility. We're not going to, I think Mr. Mefford has been clear on that with the overall, kind of approach to it. So I just want to be clear. There's, we recognize it's going to take a team to run that facility. So, Commissioner Street. Sorry. Thank you, sir. You're muted, Commissioner. There you go.
So the city has 640 something employees. And so, and Robbie, to your point, like if it costs $1 million, it costs $1 million. Well, we don't have $1 million. So that means that's why I keep pointing to things like, hey, we need to go back to our housing programs. We need to go back to CBDGR. We need to go back to the funding sources that we have and reprogram them in a way that meets our current objectives. And so for me, the question is, hey, and it's what I tell my kids. I said, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And so what are the objectives and the priorities? And then you align your funding towards that. So whether that be reallocating 600 and something staff, whether that be looking at the different pockets of funding that we have available to do programming, to do staffing, whether it be looking at parties that are interested in helping be a part of that, like we do at Panama City of the Arts and other places like that. Those are that can provide private resources and raise resources to help that. I think it's an all the above. So do I see it realistic to run the MLK Center on one employee? Absolutely not. But do I see it realistic that we're just going to create a line item in the budget for $1 million? I don't think that's what Janice is asking for. I think what we're well, it may be, but you may be, I don't want to speak for you, Janice, that may be what you're asking for, but there really isn't margin in the budget that's presented right now to do any of that without reallocating what the departments have already presented. And that's why I asked the question. It's like, yes, we can have every department come in and they can present to us and they can tell us our ideas. But the way that government is set up and the way that it serves the people best is the elected officials set the priorities and then the staff then execute from that standpoint. So if we are changing priorities based upon what we see today, then we also need to bring ideas of where the funding is that we see a lesser priority than maybe what staff has presented so that we can accomplish that. And so I think it is achievable. I don't think it's saying no, like there isn't a way to do this, but it could be uncomfortable to sit and say, hey, you know what? This area where we've been focusing on in our LHAP, we need to change that, and we need to focus more on programming in MLK. Hey, this is what we've been focusing on in CRA. Maybe we need to change that, and we need to focus over here. Hey, this is what we're staffing currently in quality of life. Maybe we need to change that and look at staffing over here. Like, that's also a part of this conversation in creating the end result that we're offered, because we're measured by the results that we give, not by how we get there. And so if there is a different need than what's presented in that budget than what has been presented, then we need to communicate that to staff, and then let's get in a room and let's find where we get the money from. Like, that's the thing. And it's no different. I know we're talking about MLK because Janice brought it up, but it's the same way with roads. It's the same way with anything. Like, we're saying, and we've intentionally said, we're not raising taxes. So if we do not do that, and I am 100% on board on doing that, we have to realign the priorities that the departments have presented in this budget to achieve something. That was it.
And Josh, we don't have a line item budget for road outlay or capital outlay. We don't have a budget for staff over there. Well, I know, but we need. When I said $1 million, I'm not saying write a check right now. But if that's what we need to figure out how to get there. But we need to add a line item budget every year for that part. And the 20 million got spent. And it's like, okay, now what do we do? Well, we got to figure out how to pay for it, and it's got to open, and it's got to be right. But and however and maybe this year, next year hurt a little bit. But if we budget for it, it then becomes easier to close the gap. That's no different than the Martin. We're going to find somebody in revenue share, but if we were to run it, it would be a problem too. But we wouldn't have the money there. So, but it deserves. The right way to do it. It deserves the best possible staff, because it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be a gem, and it's awesome, man. It is so cool. So, but yeah, I agree with you. We're not going to do it and just write a check today.
No, and it's more than a gem. We've invested in
GEM, not JYM, GEM.
Got it. But this is where we hash it out at this level. Staff has brought us what we've asked for, and it's on us now. The folks aren't going to look at Jonathan Hayes when the MLK Center opens and we have this big party, and then they're wondering, okay, when does the programming start? They're going to look at us.
Commissioner Street?
Exactly.
Is your hand back up, sir, or is that from an earlier one?
Yeah. And so just to give you guys insight, because I know you guys aren't a part of my meetings with staff, I mean, that's what we were talking about today. Is like, hey, okay, you guys have presented a balanced budget to us. It's utilizing this. I'm looking at the projections for next year. I know where we're making up the gap this year that won't be there next year. And I'm saying to them, I said, okay, what are we tackling? And so for me, like, if we want to, I like making changes early and often. I don't want to be forced into a decision that ultimately I'm going into the next year. I know I'm short. So right now the number is $4.6 million that we're pulling from. One, fire pension by paying it down. Two, we're pulling it from a property sale for the nursing home. That's what's making up our budget gaps this year. $4.6 million. Okay, neither one of those are available next year. We are going through a refinance, which we've all been presented by Jan. That's potentially $2 million of that $4.6 million. That's still $2.4 million short. And I understand, like right now, like I get that maybe I'm at a little slight bit of an advantage because I've gone through a lot of these budget cycles, through a lot of crazy stuff. But this is where I want to make sure that we understand, like, hey, like it's one thing, and the typical time that we go through stuff is like, this is my priority. Can you help me figure this out? But because reserves are now down at the lowest level they've been since I've been here, because we've allocated insurance proceeds, we've done all of these different things, like we've got to look at some of the areas where we're subsidizing that maybe we can't subsidize anymore. And so marinas are a great example of them. Right now, we had to pull out $500,000 in debt that the general fund's having to cover because the revenues aren't there to sustain that debt payment. And, so we've got to push stuff forward to get them off of our books. We're operating at a loss. The same thing's happening in housing. We've gone through all the Hurricane Michael funding and we're operating at a deficit. Hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that we are using to operate the way that our LHAP is written today. And I think, Janice, you had a great idea in bringing Florida Housing to try and help us realign that to a better way that we might be able to find efficiencies and also get a better result that align with our priorities today. And so all of these things work together to get us the margin that we need to. But I want to see results at the end of this budget process. That's what I'm driven by. I mean, staff brought us this, the typical process. I've been here for 4 years. You present it, the departments come in, they talk about their priorities, we talk about how there's no money, and then we basically rubber stamp what they brought us in the first place. And so last year was the first year that kind of changed a little bit, and this year has a great way of doing it. But if we're not clear and 100% resolved in what our objectives are, then, we're going to have to spend a year doing this. It is 30 days, 60 days, however long it is, and open to suggestions on how to get there. I've got some creative ideas, but I just want to make sure, because in the past, whether it was talking about PMO, whether it was talking about those other things, I didn't really communicate very well what was actually going on in those. The balanced budget proposal this year involves $4.6 million of funding that will not reoccur next year. So that is an important piece to understand going through this budget process. And I'm sure the team can kind of walk you through that. So that's why I want to look at debt. That's why I want to look at those things. I'm going to areas where the general fund is subsidizing that maybe we're at the point where we can't subsidize it at the level that we can anymore.
Josh, are you wanting to present some of those ideas in the next virtual meeting, or how do you want to just work with staff, or what would be the best way to bubble up and push those ideas forward?
I mean, if you guys are comfortable talking about the uncomfortable, I think it would be great.
I'm here for it.
Well,
I know
we gotta vote on it.
Yeah.
To Robbie's point, we have to vote on it.
And I think that would be helpful to all of us. And even if, whether talking about Granger, brought up like Station 5, you kind of were like, oh my gosh, are we talking about closing Station 5? No, in all my conversations, I've not talked about closing Station 5. But there are things that I do think, hey guys, like we're at this point where maybe we can do a transitionary period, but we're going to have to get in some uncomfortable dialogue if we want to get more accomplished inside this budget. And the team can't necessarily, they've got to have our united voice to getting there. Otherwise, it's just like the team presented a great budget. They had a very high task to balance this. They had an $8 million task and they balanced it. And so I don't want to take anything away from that. But what I'm hearing is we're not feeling like we're getting exactly everything that we're wanting to get out of this. And to do it, we're going to have to get uncomfortable, and we're going to have to talk about some things that may be even important to us personally. And that includes me. So
to the people watching this now and later, nobody's talking about getting rid of Station 5
Or Station 3.
or any station.
Yeah. Or the city attorney.
Yeah. I know I already responded to somebody that tagged Alan and I in a post. I'm like, guys, like, quit trying to burn us down. We're really trying to problem solve. And if you want to see how it's done, this is how it's done in a clear and transparent way. And so it's uncomfortable, but you know what? It's productive.
So I didn't get the takeaway, Josh. Do you want to? I think next meeting we set aside some time for Josh, or it's a whole separate meeting, or staff comes back with 4.6 million and more reductions. So that's the number we keep saying, right, or Josh?
Yeah, but it's not a reduction for this year. It's a reduction for next year. So what's the plan? And that was my concerns that I gave to staff today as well. Is that yes, okay, we're getting to a budget to where we're not touching reserves at all, but at the same time, we're using 2 silver bullets that we don't have in 2027, right? So, or for 2026 going into 2027. So yes, there should be a plan that we address. What does that look like? Like a 5-year plan. I mean, that's really probably what we should try to tackle is a 5-year plan. And I absolutely agree. There's some things that we are subsidizing that we're going to have to stop subsidizing.
So what I would suggest is and I think those of you guys that got to work through a budget process with me too, is I'm never just looking at this year. I'm always looking at the next and the next one after that. And so what I would suggest is I do have a framework that I've been working on that's it's primitive, and it obviously will need everyone to help shape it. I don't think we can find $4.6 million in 1 year and not go to a layoff perspective aggressively. And so how I've typically liked to drive these changes, whether it was with PMO, whether it was other activities that we were doing, is I always like to look at what is a transitionary plan that allows, if we are changing the structure inside of the team, that they have the opportunity to apply for other jobs. They have an opportunity to make relocations and through attrition, make it happen. You can do that if you start early. If you wait until the end, you can't do it. And so, for me, that's how I like to tackle this problem, very, very creatively. I'm not saying it results in layoffs. It may just be hey, look, there's 50 people that moved this year, and we don't replace the positions, and we're good. But I think we do need to be intentional about it. $4.6 million is an accurate number if everything stays the same, but we're going to get into some conversations that are even things that automatically increase every year that we need to talk about too, because it may not be 4.6, it may be 5.8, and I would like to do that, Alan. Let me walk through kind of my thought process and how I tackle this, and then you guys can speak into it. And if you don't like something, I mean, obviously it's not a decision-making thing. It's more okay, we don't want to get into a position like last year where we're utilizing reserves. We've gotten out of that position. So now how do we proactively adjust so that come next year, we're not feeling pressured to have to raise taxes or to have to do something else? And we can do that, but we have to start now. And I think it does include this budget year. So my takeaway is, yes, I'll be ready to present next meeting.
And I'll just state, I mean, we have the workshop tomorrow. The presentation I have will not be very long. And so I think there'll be some time to speak to some of this tomorrow, Commissioner Street, for sure. So we're starting at 3 p.m. at the county building.
That's your payback for 60 days, Josh. You get 1 day.
So as we consider going forth, I mean, if we're going to start at 30 in the morning, can we not end at midnight? That's all I'm asking.
Great. Yeah.
Do we get to vote on that tomorrow to start at 4?
This needs to be at 4 o'clock if we do this again.
That's like I said, I'm going to add an item, just newsflash. I'm going to add an item to the agenda tomorrow night to deal with the 5:30 stuff. I've already shared that with each of you. So
we did 3 kind of large things tonight. If we'd have stuck with 1 large and 1 small, I think we wouldn't have gone as late.
Meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
I was going to say next we're going to move into, I don't know, the police department. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
motion we adjourn.
Yeah.
No action.
Yeah. No action.
Thanks. See ya.
All right, great conversation. See you.
Thank you.
All right. See y'all tomorrow at 3:00.
Have a good night.